The envelope arrived at 11:47 p.m., slid under her apartment door like a death sentence. Inside, a photograph of her brother zip-tied to a chair, blood crusting his split lip, and a number written in red Sharpie across his forehead, $350,000. Evelyn Mercer's hands shook so hard the paper fluttered to the linoleum. She had 48 hours, no savings, no options, just debt that could swallow her family whole. That's when the phone rang. Unknown number. A woman's voice, calm as ice. "Miss Mercer, I represent someone who can make your problem disappear. All you have to do is marry him." Before we dive into Evelyn's impossible choice, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The smell hit Evelyn first, antiseptic mixed with stale coffee, and the particular sourness of bodies that had given up. She pushed through the double doors of St. Augustine's nursing home at 10:52 p.m., third shift, bones already aching from the 8 hours she'd just finished at the physical therapy clinic across town. Her scrub still carried the scent of Bengay and desperation from the afternoon's patients. 70-year-old knees that would never fully bend again, stroke victims relearning how to grip a fork. "You're late," Donna said from behind the nurse's station, not looking up from her gossip magazine. She was 50-something, face like a clenched fist, the kind of woman who'd worked night shifts so long she'd forgotten what sunlight felt like. 6 minutes. Evelyn signed the log with a pen that barely worked. "Traffic on Broadway." "Traffic," Donna snorted. "At 11 p.m. Evelyn didn't bite. Couldn't afford to. She needed this job the way drowning people needed air. Her father was 3 doors down the hall in room 114, the room that cost $6,400 a month that insurance had stopped covering 2 months ago. The bill sat in her purse like a ticking bomb, $12,800 in arrears, with a red-stamped notice that said final warning in letters that seemed to get bigger every time she looked at them. She made her rounds, changed bedpans, administered meds, held the hand of a 91-year-old woman who cried for her dead husband every night at midnight like clockwork. The hours bled together in fluorescent lighting and the mechanical wheeze of oxygen machines. At 2:17 a.m., she finally slipped into her father's room. Thomas Mercer sat propped against pillows, mouth slack, eyes tracking nothing. The stroke had taken him 4 months ago. Sudden, devastating, complete. 1 minute he'd been shouting at a Celtics game on TV, the next he was on the kitchen floor with half his face sliding off like melted wax. The doctor said he could hear, could understand. Evelyn wasn't sure that was a mercy. "Hey, Dad?" She pulled up the plastic chair that had molded itself to her shape over dozens of nights. "Sorry I'm late. Mrs. Chen needed an extra session. Her hip's not healing right." He blinked. That was all he could do. Blink and breathe and exist in a body that had betrayed him. She talked anyway. Told him about her day. The patients, the traffic, the coffee maker at the clinic that finally died after 16 years of abuse. Stupid, mundane things. Anything to fill the silence that wanted to swallow her whole. Her phone buzzed at 2:43 a.m. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Nothing good came from unknown numbers at 2:43 in the morning. But something, instinct, desperation, the same reckless gene that had destroyed her brother, made her thumb the green button. Evelyn Mercer. Female voice. Smooth, educated, the kind of voice that came from private schools and trust funds. "Who's asking?" "My name is Celeste Vale. I'm an attorney. I represent someone who has a proposition for you." Evelyn's stomach dropped. "I don't—" "It concerns your brother, Jace." The air left her lungs. "I don't know what he told you," Evelyn said, standing up, moving into the hallway where her father couldn't hear, couldn't understand. "But I can't help him. I don't have $350,000. Celeste's voice didn't change. "That's what he owes to some very dangerous people. I'm aware." The linoleum seemed to tilt under Evelyn's feet. "How do you—" "Miss Mercer, I'm calling because my client can eliminate that debt entirely, tonight, within the hour, if you agree to his terms." This was a scam. Had to be. Nobody erased 6-figure gambling debts out of charity. "What terms?" "Marriage." Evelyn laughed. It came out sharp, almost hysterical. "Are you out of your—" 2 years. A legally binding contract. In exchange for posing as his wife, attending events, maintaining appearances, residing in his home, my client will pay off your brother's debt in full, cover all your father's medical expenses, and provide you with a substantial monthly stipend. At the end of the contractual period, you'll receive an additional settlement of $5 million and an uncontested divorce. The hallway spun. An elderly man in a wheelchair rolled past, oxygen tank hissing, oblivious to the fact that Evelyn's entire reality had just cracked open. This is insane. This is business. Celeste's tone could have frozen vodka. My client needs a wife for specific legal and social purposes. You need money. The arrangement is mutually beneficial. Who is he? Lucien Vale. The name detonated in Evelyn's chest. Everyone in Boston knew Lucien Vale. Billionaire financier, corporate shark. The man who dismantled 3 Fortune 500 companies before his 35th birthday and walked away with their bones. His face showed up in the business section next to headlines like Vale Hostile Takeover or Corporate Bloodbath. He was famous for having no weaknesses, no vulnerabilities, no pulse. Why me? You meet the requirements. You're educated, presentable, and desperate enough to say yes. You also have no social media presence, no public scandals, and a work history that suggests reliability. My client doesn't want a gold digger or a socialite. He wants someone who understands transactions. Evelyn's throat felt like sandpaper. I need time to... You have until tomorrow at 6 p.m. After that, the offer expires and you're on your own. Celeste paused. Miss Mercer, your brother's creditors are not patient people. I understand they've already made their displeasure known. The break-in. 3 nights ago. Her apartment door kicked open, deadbolt hanging useless. Nothing stolen, just a message. Photos of her walking to work, grocery shopping, visiting her father, all pinned to the refrigerator with a kitchen knife. The words "you have 1 week" scrawled across her bathroom mirror in red lipstick that looked too much like blood. She'd filed a police report. The cops had shrugged, said without evidence there was nothing they could do. One of them, a tired-looking sergeant with a coffee stain on his collar, had looked at her with something like pity and said, "You know someone in debt?" She'd lied, said no. Now the lie sat in her stomach like broken glass. How do I know this isn't Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Café Margot on Newbury Street. Come alone. My client will explain the terms personally. If you're not interested, walk away. If you are... Celeste let the silence finish the sentence. Bring your ID and social security card. We'll need them for the paperwork. The line went dead. Evelyn stood in the nursing home hallway, phone clutched in her shaking hand, surrounded by the mechanical sounds of people dying in slow motion. Her reflection stared back from a darkened window, 31 years old, exhausted, trapped. She thought about Jace, her baby brother, 26 and stupid and charming in the way that got him free drinks and bad decisions. He'd started with poker games in college basements, graduated to underground clubs where the stakes got higher and the people got worse. She'd bailed him out before. Small amounts, hundreds here and there, always swearing it was the last time. This wasn't hundreds. This was a number that could get him killed. Get her killed. The men who'd broken into her apartment weren't making idle threats. She knew how this worked. She'd seen enough true crime documentaries, read enough news stories about bodies found in dumpsters or the trunks of abandoned cars. Gambling debts didn't disappear. They compounded. And when the interest got high enough, people started losing fingers. Then hands. Then their lives. She looked back through the window of her father's room. He sat exactly as she'd left him, trapped inside a body that had become his prison. The medical bills were drowning her. The nursing home had already sent 2 notices. One more and they'd transfer him to a state facility, the kind of place where patients lay in their own filth and died of infections that antibiotics could have stopped. Marriage. To a stranger. For money. The words felt obscene, but so did watching her brother disappear. So did letting her father rot in a Medicaid warehouse because she couldn't afford basic human dignity. She didn't sleep that night. Finished her shift in a fog, drove home at dawn through streets that looked alien in the early light. Her apartment still bore traces of the break-in. The door frame splintered where they'd kicked it in, patched with duct tape because she couldn't afford a real repair. The photos were gone from the fridge, but she could still see them in her mind. Her face, over and over, captured without her knowledge. Stalked like prey. She called in sick to the clinic. First time in 3 years. Then she sat on her futon with her laptop and searched. Lucien Vale. The images that came back showed a man who looked carved from marble and malice. Sharp jaw. Gray eyes the color of January storms. Dark hair always perfect. Suits that probably cost more than her annual salary. In every photo he looked the same, controlled, calculating, utterly without warmth. There were pictures of him at charity galas with impossibly beautiful women on his arm, but never the same woman twice. Never anyone who looked like they mattered. Articles called him ruthless, brilliant, dangerous. One profile in Forbes described him as a man who views human emotion as a liability to be eliminated. Another, from a bitter ex-business partner, claimed Lucien Vale didn't have a heart, just a balance sheet where other people had feelings. Evelyn read until her eyes burned. Then she read more. At 1:47 p.m., she stood in front of her closet trying to figure out what you wore to meet a billionaire who wanted to buy a wife. Everything she owned looked wrong, too cheap, too worn, too obviously the wardrobe of someone who shopped at Target clearance sales and considered $40 jeans an investment. She settled on black pants and a gray sweater. Simple. Clean. The kind of outfit that said, "I'm not trying to impress you," even though her hands shook so badly she had to redo her eyeliner 3 times. Café Margot occupied a corner of Newberry Street where the rent alone probably exceeded Evelyn's yearly income. All exposed brick and Edison bulbs and the kind of studied casualness that came with $20 salads. She arrived at 1:58 p.m., heart hammering against her ribs. A woman stood near the entrance, tall, black, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that screamed expensive lawyer. She looked at Evelyn with the same expression someone might use examining a used car. "Miss Mercer, I'm Celeste Vale." She extended a hand. Her grip was firm enough to hurt. "He's waiting, back corner. I'll join you shortly to discuss paperwork." Evelyn walked through the cafe feeling every eye on her, even though no one was looking. Past couples on laptops, past college kids with more money than sense, past a world that existed in a tax bracket she'd never touch. He sat in the corner booth, face buried in a tablet, fingers moving across the screen with the efficiency of someone for whom time was literally money. Lucien Vale. In person, he was somehow worse, more real, more imposing, more there. The photos hadn't captured the intensity, the way he occupied space like a predator in repose. He wore a black suit with no tie, white shirt open at the collar. His watch probably cost more than her car. He looked up when she approached. Those eyes, gray and cold and completely unreadable. "Sit." Not a greeting, a command. Evelyn sat. For a long moment, he just looked at her, not leering, assessing, like she was a column of numbers that needed adding up. It made her skin crawl. "You're younger than I expected," he said finally. "You're colder than I expected," she shot back before she could stop herself. Something flickered in his expression. Not quite amusement. Maybe surprise that she'd spoken. Celeste explained the terms. "Marry you for 2 years, play pretend, get paid." Evelyn's voice came out harder than she intended. "Yeah," she explained. "And you're interested." "I'm here, aren't I? People do things for many reasons." He set down the tablet. His hands were perfect. Clean nails, no calluses, the hands of someone who'd never done physical labor in his life. "I need to know you understand what this is. Not a romance, not a relationship, a contract. You'll live in my home, attend events as my wife, and maintain the appearance of a legitimate marriage. In return, your family's debts disappear and you receive financial security." "Why?" The question escaped before she could trap it. His jaw tightened. "That's not your concern." "You're asking me to marry you. I think it's my concern." They stared at each other across the table. Outside, people walked past in the October sunlight, completely unaware that someone's life was being negotiated over overpriced coffee. "Business reasons," he said finally. "I need to project stability. My board is concerned about my image. A wife solves several problems simultaneously, so I'm a problem solver. You're a solution." He leaned back. "I don't do emotions, Miss Mercer. I don't do complications. This is a transaction. You provide a service, I provide compensation, nothing more." Something in his tone made her want to throw her water glass at his perfect face, But she thought about Jace, the photos on her fridge, her father's empty eyes. What happens if I say no? You walk away. Your brother's creditors will find him within the week, probably within days. I understand they're not known for mercy. He said it without inflection, like he was reading stock prices. Your choice. The cruelty of it stunned her. Not that he was lying, that he was being so brutally honest. He didn't care. He was offering her a life raft, and simultaneously making it clear he wouldn't lose sleep if she drowned. I have questions. You have 10 minutes. She wanted to leave. Wanted to tell this cold, arrogant bastard exactly where he could shove his contract. But desperation was a vice around her throat. Where would I live? My penthouse. You'll have your own bedroom, your own space. We won't... He paused, choosing words carefully. Share a bed. This is for appearances only. What about my job? You'll quit. You'll be too busy with social obligations. The contract includes a monthly stipend of $15,000 for personal expenses. $15,000 a month. More than she made in 3 months at both jobs combined. My father will be transferred to the best long-term care facility in Boston. All expenses covered. Unlimited care. Lucian's expression didn't change. I don't do things halfway, Miss Mercer. If you agree, your family's problems end tonight. And after 2 years, quiet divorce, substantial settlement. You disappear back into whatever life you want. We never speak again. It sounded too easy, too clean. Nothing in Evelyn's life had ever been clean. What's the catch? The catch, Lucian said, leaning forward, is that if you breach the contract, if you speak to the press, if you embarrass me publicly, if you violate the non-disclosure agreement in any way, you lose everything. The money stops. Your brother's debt gets transferred back to your name with interest. Your father's care ends immediately, and I will personally ensure you never work in healthcare again. The threat hung between them like a knife. So I'm a prisoner. You're an employee. He didn't blink. With very generous benefits and very specific terms of employment, the choice is yours. Celeste appeared beside the table with a leather portfolio. The paperwork is ready, prenuptial agreement, NDA, and the marriage contract itself. I'll need 2 hours to review everything with Miss Mercer. Lucienne stood. Up close, he was taller than she expected, maybe 6'2", with the kind of presence that made the room rearrange itself around him. He looked down at Evelyn with those storm cloud eyes, and she saw absolutely nothing in them. No empathy, no humanity, just cold calculation. Take your time, he said, but decide by 6. I have a dinner meeting at 7, and I don't like to be kept waiting. He walked away without another word, leaving Evelyn alone with Celeste and a stack of papers that would sell the next 2 years of her life. She read every page. The prenup protected his assets. Naturally. She'd get nothing of his fortune except what was explicitly stated in the contract. The NDA was airtight, threatening legal destruction if she ever spoke publicly about the arrangement. The marriage contract itself was 47 pages of clauses and subclauses that reduced human connection to bullet points and obligations. Page 23, Section 4. The parties agree to maintain separate bedrooms and will not engage in sexual relations unless mutually agreed upon in writing. Page 31, Section 7. A. The wife agrees to attend no fewer than 2 social events per week and will dress in accordance with standards appropriate to the husband's social position. Page 40, Section 11F. Any pregnancy occurring during the contract period will result in immediate termination of the agreement and forfeiture of all financial benefits. It was the coldest document Evelyn had ever read. Marriage reduced to terms and conditions. Love explicitly forbidden. At 5:47 p.m., Celeste pushed a pen across the table. This is your last chance to walk away. Evelyn thought about Jace, about her father, about the men who'd broken into her apartment and would break into worse than that given time. She thought about dignity and desperation and how little separated the two. Her hand shook as she signed her name. Evelyn Marie Mercer. 13 letters that sold her future to a stranger. We'll arrange the courthouse ceremony for Friday, Celeste said, already packing papers with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Maybe not this exact transaction, but close enough. 11 a.m. Bring your birth certificate. We'll have a photographer to document it. purely for legal purposes. Does he do this often? Evelyn's voice sounded distant. Buy people? Celeste looked at her with something that might have been pity. Mr. Vale doesn't buy people, Miss Mercer. He solves problems. The sooner you understand the difference, the easier this will be. The attorney left. Evelyn sat alone in the cafe as the sky outside dimmed to purple. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number again, but this time she knew exactly who it was. The text was short. Your brother's debt has been cleared. Confirmation will arrive within the hour. Welcome to the arrangement, Miss Mercer. No congratulations, no warmth, just a transaction confirmed. She walked out into the October evening feeling like a ghost. The city looked the same, but she had changed. Somewhere in the last 4 hours, she'd stopped being Evelyn Mercer, physical therapist, daughter, sister, person, and become something else. Mrs. Vale, a fiction, a performance, a bought woman. When she got home, her phone rang. Evie? Jace's voice cracking with relief and terror, and something that might have been tears. What the fuck did you do? They just called, said the debt's cleared, all of it. Said some rich guy paid it off and I'm free. What did you do? She couldn't answer, couldn't find words that would make sense. Evie, please. What did you do? I fixed it, she whispered. How? But she'd already hung up. 3 days later, Evelyn stood in a courthouse that smelled like floor wax and broken families, wearing a dress Celeste had picked out. Cream-colored, simple, the kind of thing that would photograph well but meant nothing. Lucienne wore another perfect suit, expression carved from granite. The judge, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, read the vows with all the enthusiasm of someone ordering lunch. Do you, Lucienne Vale, take this woman? I do. Flat, mechanical. A checkbox ticked. Do you, Evelyn Mercer, take this man? She looked at him. At the stranger she was binding herself to. At the man whose eyes held absolutely nothing when he looked back at her. I do. The judge pronounced them married. Lucien extended his hand for a handshake. A fucking handshake. His palm was warm and dry and completely impersonal, like sealing a business deal, which, she supposed, was exactly what this was. Welcome to the arrangement, Mrs. Vale. The photographer snapped pictures, Lucienne's hand in hers, their faces carefully neutral, the perfect image of a couple who'd just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Celeste handed Evelyn a black American Express card. For household expenses and personal purchases. No limit. Don't embarrass him. They left in separate cars. Evelyn watched Boston blur past the town car window, headed toward a penthouse she'd never seen, to live with a man she didn't know, playing a part she'd never auditioned for. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. But she knew now, always knew. Black tie event tomorrow night. 7 p.m. Waldorf. Celeste will send appropriate attire. Don't be late. Not even a signature. Just commands from her new husband, who couldn't be bothered with pleasantries. She looked at the wedding band on her finger. Platinum, simple, expensive. It felt like a shackle. The car pulled up to a building that looked like it cost more than her entire neighborhood. The doorman called her Mrs. Vale, and she flinched every time. The elevator climbed 43 floors into the sky, into a world where people like her weren't supposed to exist. The penthouse was all glass and steel and cold modern lines. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city like a kingdom. White marble floors. Furniture that looked like art installations. Not a home. A showroom. Lucien stood by the windows, still in his suit, drink in hand, staring at Boston like he owned it. Maybe he did. Your room is down the hall, second door on the left. Celeste had your things moved. He didn't turn around. We have an event tomorrow night. Gala for Children's Hospital. A lot of press. You'll smile, say nothing controversial, and let me do the talking. Understood? Understood. She felt like she was drowning on dry land. Good. Silence stretched between them, filled with the hum of the city below and the space of everything they weren't saying. Is there anything else? Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. He finally turned, looked at her like she was a piece of furniture he'd just purchased, and was already regretting. Yes. Don't fall in love with me, Mrs. Vale. It won't end well for either of us. Then he walked past her, down a different hallway, into whatever cold bedroom he occupied, leaving her alone in a palace that felt like a tomb. Evelyn found her room. Her things, meager as they were, had been unpacked by someone else's hands. Her clothes in the closet next to empty hangers waiting for the wardrobe Celeste would provide. Her toiletries in a bathroom bigger than her old apartment. She sat on the edge of a bed that probably cost more than her car and felt the weight of what she'd done settle over her like concrete. She'd married a man who treated her like a transaction. She'd sold 2 years of her life. And somewhere in this pristine prison, she'd have to figure out how to survive without losing whatever pieces of herself she still owned. Her phone lit up one last time. Text from Jace. "Thank you. I don't know what you did, but thank you. I'll make this right. I promise." She didn't respond. Instead, she lay back on expensive sheets that smelled like nothing, staring at a ceiling that stretched too high, and wondered if you could drown in luxury. Tomorrow night, she'd put on a designer dress and pretend to be someone else. Tomorrow night, she'd smile on Lucy in Vale's arm and let the world believe the lie. But tonight, alone in a bedroom that wasn't hers, in a life she'd signed away, Evelyn Mercer allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to cry. Then she dried her eyes, squared her shoulders, and prepared to become the ghost of Mrs. Vale. Because in 43 floors of glass and steel and cold perfection, she was learning the first brutal lesson of her new existence. When you sell yourself to survive, the price isn't paid all at once. It's extracted slowly. In pieces you don't realize you're losing until they're already gone. The dress arrived at 9 a.m. in a box that probably cost more than most people's rent. Evelyn opened it on the bed, midnight blue silk that moved like water, designer labels she'd only seen in magazines worn by women who didn't have to check price tags. A handwritten note from Celeste. Shoes and jewelry in separate boxes. Hair and makeup team arrives at 4 p.m. Do not embarrass him. No, good luck. No, you'll be fine. Just a threat wrapped in expensive paper. Evelyn held the dress up to the October light streaming through windows that showed her a city she no longer belonged to. 3 days as Mrs. Vale, and she still felt like an imposter squatting in someone else's life. The penthouse was a museum where she was afraid to touch anything. Lucien was a ghost who left for work before dawn and returned after midnight, communicating only through terse texts that read like military orders. She hadn't seen him since the wedding. The hair and makeup team descended at 4 o'clock sharp. 3 women who moved with the efficiency of a surgical unit, transforming her bathroom into a salon. They didn't ask what she wanted. Just went to work like she was a mannequin, pulling her hair into an elegant twist, painting her face into something that looked like Evelyn, but wasn't, not really. "Mr. Vale prefers classic," the lead stylist said, wielding an eyeliner pencil like a scalpel. "Nothing too dramatic. You're the frame, not the picture." The frame, not the picture. Evelyn wanted to ask what that meant, but the woman's expression suggested questions weren't welcome. So she sat still while they erased her and replaced her with someone more appropriate for Lucien Vale's arm. At 6:47 p.m., she stood in front of the full-length mirror in her bedroom and barely recognized herself. The dress fit like it had been designed for her body specifically, probably had been, knowing Celeste's efficiency. Her face looked softer, more refined, expensive. Diamond earrings Celeste had sent caught the light like tiny fires. She looked like she belonged in this world. The illusion was perfect. "We leave in 5 minutes." Lucien's voice from the doorway made her jump. She turned and found him leaning against the frame, black tuxedo that probably cost more than a decent used car. Bow tie perfectly straight, hair styled with the kind of casual precision that took serious money to achieve. He looked like he'd stepped out of a cologne ad, all sharp lines and cold elegance. His eyes traveled over her with the same assessing look he'd given her at the cafe. Inventory. Checking quality control. "You'll do," he said. Not, "you look nice." Not even a basic human compliment, just clinical approval that she'd met minimum specifications. "Thanks," she said, loading the word with enough acid to strip paint. "You look like a tax write-off, too." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, that she'd bit back. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by that impenetrable mask he wore like armor. "The car's waiting. We're already late." He walked away without checking if she followed, like her compliance was assumed, purchased. The town car smelled like leather and money. They sat on opposite ends of the back seat, a canyon of expensive upholstery between them. The driver pulled into Boston traffic and Lucien immediately buried himself in his phone, fingers flying across the screen, completely ignoring her existence. Evelyn watched the city slide past and tried to remember how to breathe. "When we arrive, Lucien said without looking up. "Stay close. Smile. Let me handle conversations. If anyone asks how we met, we were introduced by mutual friends at a charity event last spring. If they ask about the wedding, it was private and intimate. If they ask anything personal, deflect. Understood? Do I get a script or should I just improvise the lies?" Now he looked at her, those gray eyes sharp enough to cut. "This isn't a joke, Evelyn. These people are sharks. They'll smell weakness and exploit it. One wrong word and they'll tear apart our story, and I'll be left cleaning up your mess." "Our story?" "Right. The one where you bought yourself a wife because what, you couldn't find one the normal way?" His jaw tightened. For a second she thought he might actually show emotion, but he just turned back to his phone. "The normal way requires things I don't have time for, like feelings." The car pulled up to the Waldorf, and suddenly they were in another world. Camera flashes exploded like artillery fire. A red carpet stretched toward golden doors. People in formal wear that cost more than vehicles stepped from limousines like minor royalty. "Showtime," Lucien muttered. The driver opened his door. Sound crashed over them, cameras clicking, reporters shouting questions, the general chaos of Boston's elite gathering to congratulate themselves on their charity. Lucien stepped out first, buttoned his jacket with practiced ease, then extended a hand back toward the car. For her. Evelyn took it because she had to. His palm was warm and dry and completely impersonal, but the moment she emerged from the car, his entire demeanor shifted. The cold businessman vanished. In his place appeared a man who looked at her like she mattered, hand settling on her lower back, body angling toward hers, smile that almost seemed genuine. The performance was flawless. Mr. Vale, is this your wife? When did you get married? Can we get a photo?" Lucien's hand pressed against her back, guiding, controlling. They moved up the carpet like they'd done this 1,000 times. He leaned down, mouth close to her ear, and from a distance it probably looked intimate, romantic. "Smile," he whispered, "like you don't hate me." She smiled, wide and bright and completely fake. Flash, flash, flash. They posed. His arm around her waist now, pulling her close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody that probably had a French name. She tilted her head toward him, let her hand rest on his chest, played the part of a woman in love, while every cell in her body screamed that this was wrong. "How did you two meet?" Lucien fielded the question without hesitation. "Mutual friends introduced us last spring. Took one conversation and I knew she was different from anyone I'd ever met." The lie came out smooth as silk, like truth. "And the wedding was private?" "Intimate," Evelyn heard herself say, surprising herself. "Just close family. We wanted something personal, not a circus." Lucien's hand tightened fractionally on her waist. Approval? Warning? Impossible to tell. They moved inside and the noise dimmed to a manageable roar. The ballroom was exactly what Evelyn expected. Crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than houses, tables set with china that looked like it belonged in museums, flower arrangements the size of small cars. Everywhere she looked, wealth performed itself. Lucien Vale, a man materialized from the crowd, 60-something, silver hair, smile like a barracuda. His tuxedo probably cost more than Evelyn used to make in 6 months. He grabbed Lucien's hand, pumping it with aggressive enthusiasm. "Richard," Lucien's voice shifted into something smooth and social. "Good to see you. Is this the mystery woman? The one who finally tamed Boston's most eligible bachelor?" Richard's eyes crawled over Evelyn with an assessment that made her skin itch. "I'm Richard Ashford. I sit on the board of Mass General." "Evelyn Vale," she said, extending her hand. Using the name still felt like wearing someone else's skin. "Pleasure?" "The pleasure's mine." His handshake lasted 2 seconds too long. "You'll have to tell me your secret. We've been trying to get Lucien to settle down for years. Most women can't handle his," he paused, grinning, "intensity." "Most women aren't her," Lucien said, pulling Evelyn closer. The possessive gesture looked natural, felt like chains. They moved through the crowd like that, Lucien's hand always on her, guiding, controlling, keeping her close enough that running wasn't an option. He introduced her to a parade of powerful people whose names she forgot immediately. Board members, CEOs, politicians, the kind of people who shaped the world from air-conditioned offices. They all looked at her with the same expression, curiosity mixed with suspicion. Who was this nobody who'd captured Lucien Vale? She smiled until her face hurt, deflected questions, played the role. At one point, trapped in conversation with three women whose jewelry could probably fund a small country, one of them, a blonde with cheekbones that looked surgically enhanced, leaned in with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. So, how long have you two really been together? Because Lucien was at the Berkshire Foundation event in August, and he was definitely alone. The other women went quiet, watching, waiting. Evelyn felt the trap closing. We kept things private. She kept her voice light, easy. Lucien's position makes that necessary sometimes. Private. The blonde's smile sharpened. How convenient. Isn't it? Evelyn met her eyes without blinking. Almost like we value our relationship more than we value gossip. The temperature dropped 5 degrees. The blonde's smile became a knife edge. But before she could respond, Lucien appeared at Evelyn's elbow. Excuse us, ladies. I need to steal my wife. He guided her away with a hand that dug into her arm just a fraction too hard. They ended up on the balcony overlooking the city, October wind cutting through the silk dress like it wasn't there. What did you say to Margaret Sutton? Who? The blonde. Margaret Sutton. Her husband is on my board. She was being a bitch, so I was a bitch back. Evelyn pulled her arm free. What did you expect me to do? Smile and take it? Yes. Lucien's voice went cold. That's exactly what I expect you to do. These people don't play fair, and you just made an enemy of someone who could make my life very difficult. Then maybe you should have hired an actress instead of a physical therapist. Maybe I should have. He stepped closer, voice dropping. But I'm stuck with you for 2 years, so let's be clear. You do not engage. You do not argue. You smile, and you deflect, and you make me look good. That's the job. That's what you're being paid for. The words hit like a slap. Right, she said quietly. I forgot. I'm an employee. A transaction. Thanks for the reminder. She tried to walk past him, but he caught her wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop her. Don't walk away from me. Or what? She turned, met those gray eyes that had never once looked at her like she was human. You'll fire me? Send me back to my shitty apartment and my brother's debt? Go ahead. I'm starting to think whatever happens would be better than this. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. The city sprawled below them, indifferent. Inside, music played and rich people congratulated themselves on their charity. Out here, in the cold October night, 2 strangers pretended to be married and failed even at pretending to be civil. I didn't think you'd be this difficult, Lucien said finally. I didn't think you'd be this much of an asshole, Evelyn shot back. Guess we're both disappointed. He released her wrist, stepped back. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its edge, not softened exactly, but dulled, tired. I need this to work, Evelyn. Not for me, for... He stopped, shook his head. Just play the part. Please. 2 years. Then you never have to see me again. There was something in his tone that made her pause, something almost vulnerable buried under all that ice. But before she could identify it, the mask slammed back down. We should go back inside. People will talk. They returned to the ballroom separately. Lucien disappeared into a conversation with men in suits who looked like they broke companies for breakfast. Evelyn found herself cornered by a woman who wanted to know about her skincare routine and whether Lucien was adventurous in bed. She wanted to scream. At 10 p.m., a man approached her by the bar, early 40s, handsome in a weathered way, smile that actually seemed genuine. He wore his tuxedo like it was comfortable, not a costume. You look like you're about to murder someone. Evelyn blinked. Excuse me? The death grip on that champagne flute. Either you hate champagne or you hate being here. He extended a hand. I'm Daniel Brooks, cardiothoracic surgeon, also hating being here. She shook his hand, surprised. Evelyn Vale, recently married, definitely hating being here. Ah, you're the famous Mrs. Vale. Daniel grabbed a drink from a passing server. Congratulations. How long have you been Mrs. Lucienne Vale? 4 days. He nearly choked on his drink. 4 days? And he brought you to this shark tank? That's either confidence or cruelty. Probably both. The words came out before she could stop them. Daniel studied her with interest. You know, you're not what I expected. What did you expect? Another trophy wife, all plastic surgery and daddy issues. He grinned. But you've got that look. The one that says you'd rather be anywhere else, and you're not afraid to say it. Refreshing, actually. Despite herself, Evelyn laughed. First genuine laugh in days. Is it that obvious? Only to people paying attention, which in this room is maybe 3 of us. He tilted his champagne toward Lucienne across the ballroom. How'd you end up with Boston's resident ice king? The question should have triggered her cover story. Mutual friends, spring meeting, intimate wedding. But something about Daniel's directness made her want to tell the truth, or at least a version closer to it. Mutual need, she said carefully. He needed a wife. I needed... She stopped. What was safe to say? A change. Honest. I like it. Daniel's expression shifted, something almost sympathetic crossing his features. For what it's worth, I've known Lucienne for about 10 years. Worked on a hospital acquisition with him. He's brilliant and ruthless and colder than a morgue drawer. But he paused. There's something there, under all that ice. Something human, just buried so deep most people never see it. Have you seen it? Once, long time ago, right after his father died. Daniel's voice dropped. Saw him sitting alone in his office at 3 a.m., staring at nothing, just broken. Only lasted about 30 seconds. Then the mask came back, and he's been wearing it ever since. Evelyn wanted to ask more, but movement caught her eye. Lucienne, cutting through the crowd toward them, face carved from granite. Dr. Brooks? His tone could have flash-frozen nitrogen. Enjoying yourself? Always. Your wife was just telling me about your whirlwind romance. 4 days married? Bold move bringing her to this particular snake pit. Lucien's hand found Evelyn's lower back again. Ownership, territory. Evelyn can handle herself. Clearly. Daniel raised his glass in mock salute. Well, congratulations to you both. I hope you find what you're looking for. He walked away, and Lucien's grip tightened fractionally. What did you tell him? Nothing. We just talked. About? Does it matter? Evelyn pulled away from his hand. He was being nice. You should try it sometime. Nice doesn't build empires. No, but it builds relationships. Human connections. Things you might have heard of if you weren't so busy being an asshole. His jaw clenched. We're leaving. It's only 10:30. We're leaving now. They made their exit with the same performative grace they'd entered with, smiling, waving, Lucien's hand possessive on her back, every move calculated for maximum effect. The moment the town car door closed, the performance ended. Silence filled the space between them like concrete. The drive home stretched eternal. Evelyn stared out the window at Boston sliding past, thinking about her old life, the one where she was poor but free, exhausted but herself. That life had problems, but at least they were her problems. This life, this gilded cage of someone else's making, felt like drowning in silk. You can't talk to people like that. Lucien's voice broke the silence. Like what? Like your friends. Like this is real. He wasn't looking at her, just staring straight ahead into nothing. Daniel Brooks is harmless, but other people aren't. They'll use anything you give them. I gave him nothing. You gave him honesty. In this world, that's a weapon. Then maybe you shouldn't have brought me into this world. I didn't have a choice. The words came out raw, unfiltered. For half a second, the mask cracked and she saw something underneath. Desperation, maybe, or exhaustion. But then his phone buzzed and his attention shifted and the moment vanished like it had never existed. The penthouse felt colder at night. All that glass reflected the city back at them, making it feel like they lived inside a kaleidoscope of lights and loneliness. Lucienne disappeared into his study without another word. Evelyn kicked off the torture devices Celeste called shoes and walked to the windows. 43 floors below, the city lived. People in bars laughing with friends. Couples walking home hand in hand. Normal people living normal lives where marriages weren't contracts and love wasn't explicitly forbidden in writing. She'd sold herself into this, signed the papers, taken the money. And now she had 727 days left to serve. Her phone buzzed. Text from a number she didn't recognize but instinctively knew. Schedule attached. 4 events next week. Celeste will coordinate wardrobe. Remember, you're the frame, not the picture. Not even from Lucien directly. Probably an assistant. A handler. Someone paid to manage the wife he'd bought like furniture. Evelyn wanted to throw the phone through the window, wanted to scream, wanted to do something, anything that would crack open this perfect prison and let reality back in. Instead, she walked to her bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of her too expensive bed in her too expensive dress and let the weight of her choice press down until she couldn't breathe. This was her life now. 2 years of performance, 2 years of being owned, 2 years of... A crash from somewhere in the penthouse jolted her to her feet, glass shattering. Then silence. She stood frozen, heart hammering, waited. Nothing. Against her better judgment, she opened her door. The hallway stretched dark and empty. Another sound, lower, almost inhuman, coming from Lucien's study. She should go back to her room, mind her business. He'd made it clear they weren't friends, weren't partners, weren't anything but 2 people trapped in a contract. But something pulled her forward. The study door was cracked open, light spilling through. She pushed it wider. Lucien sat on the floor surrounded by broken glass and spilled whiskey. His jacket was off, bow tie hanging loose, shirt sleeves rolled up. In one hand he held a crystal tumbler, in the other, a photograph she couldn't quite see. He looked up when she entered, and she saw his face stripped of every defense. He looked destroyed. "Get out." His voice cracked around the edges. "You're bleeding." She saw it now, blood dripping from his right hand where he'd cut it on the broken glass, mixing with whiskey on the hardwood floor. "I said get out." But she didn't. Some stupid instinct, the healer in her, the physical therapist who'd spent years helping broken people put themselves back together, pushed her forward. She grabbed a hand towel from the bar cart and knelt beside him. "Let me see." "Don't." She took his hand before he could pull away. The cut wasn't deep, but it was ugly, glass still embedded in the meat of his palm. She plucked the shards out with careful fingers, wrapped the towel around his hand, applied pressure. Yen didn't fight her, just sat there, ragdoll still, staring at nothing with eyes that had finally stopped pretending. "What happened?" Her voice came out quieter than intended. He laughed, bitter, broken sound. "What happened? That's the question, isn't it?" "Lucien, don't." He pulled his hand away, stood up with the unsteady grace of someone who'd had too much to drink. "Don't try to fix me, Evelyn. I'm not one of your patients. I'm your employer, nothing more." But his voice lacked conviction, and his eyes, those cold gray eyes that never showed anything, were wet. "What's in the photograph?" His hand clenched around it, crumpling the image. For a moment she thought he'd tell her to leave again. Instead, he did something worse. He showed her. The photo was old, faded at the edges. 2 people. A man who looked like an older, harder version of Lucien, and a woman with kind eyes and dark hair. They stood apart, not touching, expressions carefully neutral. The body language screamed distance. "My parents," Lucien said flatly, "taken 6 months before my mother walked into the ocean and didn't walk back out." The air left Evelyn's lungs. She was 38, beautiful, accomplished, married to one of Boston's most powerful men. His voice had gone hollow. And so fucking miserable she chose drowning over one more day of pretending. "Lucien, my father raised me to be like him, cold, efficient, untouchable. He said emotions were weaknesses that destroyed empires." Lucien's laugh was razors. "Turns out he was right. My mother loved him. That love killed her." He dropped the photograph, watched it flutter to the floor like a wounded bird. "So when I tell you don't fall in love with me, Evelyn, I'm not being cruel. I'm trying to save your life." Then he walked out, leaving her alone in his study, surrounded by broken glass and blood and the ghost of a woman who'd chosen death over loving a man incapable of loving her back. Evelyn sat there for a long time, photograph at her feet, beginning to understand the man she'd sold herself to. He wasn't just cold. He was terrified. And somewhere in the last 4 days, she'd stopped being just his employee and become something far more dangerous, a witness to his humanity. She picked up the photograph with careful hands. The woman in the image had Lucian's eyes, same gray, same depth, but hers held something his didn't. Hope, maybe. Or the memory of it. Evelyn set it on his desk where he'd find it. Then she cleaned up the glass, the blood, the whiskey. Made the room look like nothing had broken, even though everything had. When she returned to her bedroom, her phone showed 2:47 a.m. Another text waited. Board meeting Friday. You'll attend as my wife. Wear something that says power, not pity. Back to business. Back to masks. But she'd seen behind his now. And that changed everything. The next 3 days passed in a blur of scheduled appearances and careful performances. A lunch with wives of board members where Evelyn smiled and nodded and said nothing controversial. A museum opening where Lucien held her hand and looked at her like she mattered, and she almost believed him. A private dinner with investors where she played the role of supportive wife, while men talked about markets and mergers like they were discussing weather. Lucien never mentioned the night in his study, acted like it hadn't happened, but something had shifted. He watched her now when he thought she wasn't looking, expression unreadable, like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't add up. Thursday night, she found him in the kitchen at midnight, standing at the island with a glass of water and the hollowed-out expression of someone who hadn't slept in days. Can't sleep either? She kept her voice neutral. He looked at her like he'd forgotten she lived there. I don't sleep much. Nightmares? Consequences. She moved to the fridge, pulled out orange juice, poured herself a glass. They stood on opposite ends of the island, 5 feet of granite between them, miles of everything else. The board meeting tomorrow, she said. What do I need to know? That you're window dressing. They'll scrutinize you, judge whether you're appropriate for my position, decide if this marriage makes me more stable or more vulnerable. His voice was flat again, clinical. They'll ask personal questions designed to trip you up. Don't let them. And if I do? Then I lose credibility. The vote goes against me. The company I've built for 15 years gets handed to people who will strip it for parts and sell the bones. What vote? He hesitated. For a moment she thought he wouldn't tell her. Then, they want to remove me as CEO, install someone more, he paused, choosing words. Conventional, less aggressive. They think I'm too volatile, too ruthless. The marriage was supposed to prove I could do stable, do normal. But you can't. No. He met her eyes. I can't. The admission hung between them, honest and ugly. Why did you really hire me, Lucien? And don't give me the board-approved answer. Why me specifically? His jaw worked. She could see him calculating, deciding how much truth was safe. Finally. Because you were desperate enough to say yes, but smart enough to play the part. Because you had nothing to lose and everything to gain. Because... He stopped. Started again. Because you looked at me in that cafe like I was exactly what I am. Not a prize, not a catch. Just a man buying something he shouldn't need to buy. And for some reason that felt... Another pause. Honest. The word landed like a stone in still water. I need this to work tomorrow, he said quietly. I need you to sell them on us. Make them believe we're real. We're not real. I know. His voice dropped. But maybe you could pretend better than I can. She should say no. Should remind him this was a transaction, not a partnership. Should keep the walls up that protected her from whatever this was becoming. Instead, she said, tell me what to do. His shoulders dropped fractionally. Relief, maybe. Just be you. But the version that makes them think I'm capable of caring about something other than profit margins. So lie. So perform. There's a difference? Not in my world. Friday morning arrived with the kind of cold rain that turned Boston gray and miserable. Evelyn dressed in a charcoal suit Celeste had sent, all sharp lines and expensive fabric, the kind of outfit that said she belonged in boardrooms even though she'd never set foot in one before. The Vail Industries building downtown looked like it wanted to intimidate, all glass and steel and aggressive modernity. Lucien's office occupied the top floor naturally, corner space with views that probably cost more per square foot than most people's homes. He met her in his office at 9:45 a.m., already in full armor, navy suit, silver tie, expression that gave away absolutely nothing. Ready? No. Good. Honesty will help. He moved toward her, adjusted her collar with fingers that didn't quite steady. They'll try to separate us. Ask you questions when I'm not in the room. Don't panic, just stick to the story. Mutual friends, spring meeting, private wedding. I know. His hand stilled on her collar. For a second they just stood there, too close, his fingers against fabric that touched her skin. She could smell his cologne again, could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow she'd never noticed before. Thank you, he said quietly, for doing this. You're paying me $300,000 a year. Don't thank me. Still. The moment stretched too long. Then his phone buzzed and reality crashed back. Showtime. The boardroom was exactly what she expected. Long table, leather chairs, walls lined with monitors showing stock tickers and market data. 12 people sat around the table, all of them older, most of them men, every single one of them looking at Evelyn like she was a problem that needed solving. Gentlemen, ladies, Lucian's voice shifted into something harder, sharper. I believe you've all heard I got married. This is my wife, Evelyn. Polite nods, assessing stares. A man at the head of the table, 70s, white hair, face like weathered leather, leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Vale? Welcome. I'm Harrison Cross, board chairman. We've been eager to meet you. Translation. We've been eager to determine if you're real or a convenient lie. Thank you. Evelyn kept her voice steady. Lucien's told me a lot about the board. All good, I hope. Harrison smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Mostly terrifying, actually. Surprised laughter rippled around the table. Lucien's hand found her back. Brief, steadying. Please, sit. Harrison gestured to chairs. We have some questions if you don't mind. They sat. Lucien beside her, close enough that their knees almost touched under the table. His presence felt like armor she didn't know she needed. How did you two meet? The question came from a woman in her 60s, sharp-eyed and sharper dressed. Martha something. CFO, maybe. Evelyn launched into the script. Mutual friends. Charity event. Immediate connection. The lies came out smooth because she'd practiced them until they felt almost true. And the wedding was quite sudden. Another board member, younger, hungry-looking. Only a few months after meeting? When you know, Evelyn said. How romantic. Martha's tone suggested she found it anything but. And what do you do, Mrs. Vale, for work? I was a physical therapist. I've taken a leave to focus on adjusting to... She gestured vaguely. All this. A physical therapist. Harrison repeated it like the words tasted strange. Quite a change from that to this. Yes. Must be overwhelming. It is. And yet you seem to be handling it well. Was that a compliment or an accusation? Impossible to tell. The questions continued, carefully phrased, meticulously designed to find cracks in their story. Where did they go on their honeymoon? Nowhere yet. They were planning something for the holidays. What did they love most about each other? Evelyn deflected with humor. Lucien said something generic about her strength. Were they planning children? Someday, maybe. We're focused on now. Through it all, Lucien played his part perfectly, touched her hand, looked at her with manufactured warmth, sold the fiction of a man in love. Evelyn did the same, leaned into him when appropriate, smiled at the right moments, became the supportive wife they needed to see. But under the table, where no one could see, her hands were shaking. At 11:30, Harrison called for a break. The board members filed out, leaving Evelyn and Lucien alone in the too large room. How am I doing? She asked. Better than expected. He stood, moved to the windows overlooking the city. But Martha doesn't believe us. How do you know? Because I've worked with her for 12 years, and I know when she thinks I'm lying. He turned, face shadowed against the gray light. She'll vote against me unless we convince her otherwise. How? Before he could answer, the door opened. Martha entered alone, closing it behind her with deliberate precision. Lucien, Mrs. Vale, I wonder if I might have a word. Every muscle in Evelyn's body tensed. Of course. Lucien's voice gave away nothing. Martha sat across from them, folded her hands on the table like a prosecutor preparing to present evidence. I've known you for over a decade, Lucien. Watched you build this company from nothing into an empire. You're brilliant, ruthless, utterly focused. She paused. You're also emotionally unavailable, pathologically driven, and incapable of maintaining personal relationships that don't serve your professional advancement. Lucienne didn't flinch. Your point? My point is that this, she gestured between them, doesn't add up. You don't do sudden. You don't do impulsive. You certainly don't do love. The word hung in the air like an accusation. People change, Evelyn said. Martha turned those sharp eyes on her. Do they? Or do they just get better at hiding? What do you want, Martha? Lucienne's voice had gone cold. The truth. Martha stood. I'll vote to keep you as CEO if you can prove to me that this marriage is real. Not a performance, not a strategy. Real. How? Evelyn asked. I don't know. Martha moved toward the door, stopped with her hand on the handle. But I suggest you figure it out, because right now all I see are two very talented actors playing roles. And in my experience, performances always end, usually badly. She left. Silence filled the boardroom like floodwater. Well, Evelyn said finally, that went great. Lucien didn't respond, just stood at the window, hands in his pockets, staring at a city he might be about to lose. We'll figure it out, Evelyn said, not sure if she believed it. Will we? He didn't turn around. Maybe Martha's right. Maybe this was a mistake from the start. Maybe I should just... His phone exploded with noise, multiple calls, all at once. He answered, listened. His entire body went rigid. When? His voice had gone flat, dead. Where's he now? A pause. Send me the address. I'm leaving now. He hung up, turned to face her. Whatever was in his expression made her blood run cold. What happened? Your brother. The words came out mechanical. Someone grabbed him off the street 20 minutes ago, threw him in a van. Witnesses got a partial plate. The floor dropped out from under her. What? But the debt, you paid it. Apparently someone didn't get the message. Lucien was already moving, grabbing his jacket, phone pressed to his ear. My security team is tracking the van, but... Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, text message. She opened it and nearly vomited. A photograph. Jace zip-tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse, face already bruised, blood crusting his nose, terror in his eyes. Below the image, your husband destroyed the wrong people. Now we destroy what he loves. You have until midnight to convince him to back off the Whitmore investigation. Otherwise your brother dies screaming. And you're next. Evelyn's hand shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. Lucien grabbed it, read the message, face draining of color. Conrad Whitmore. His voice could have cut steel. This is about Conrad fucking Whitmore. Who? Oh. Pharmaceutical magnate. His company's been manipulating drug prices, killing people for profit margins. I've been building a case to expose them. His jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. Apparently, he found out. You have to stop. Evelyn could barely breathe. Whatever you're doing, you have to stop. If I stop, he wins. People die. Jace dies if you don't. They stared at each other across 3 feet of space that might as well have been a chasm. I'll get him back, Lucien said finally. I have resources. People who specialize in what? Rescuing kidnapped brothers from psychopaths? Jesus Christ, Lucien, this isn't a business deal. Her voice cracked. This is my brother's life and it's being threatened because of your fucking investigation into some company I don't care about. You should care. They've killed... I don't! The scream tore out of her. I don't care about your crusade or your company or any of this. I care about my brother, the one I sold myself to save, the one who's about to die because I married you. The truth detonated between them. Lucien's face went carefully blank. So that's what this is. That's what I am to you. What did you think? That I was here because I wanted to be? That this was anything other than a transaction? Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You bought me, Lucien. You bought me to solve your problems, and now your problems are going to kill my family. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Something in his expression cracked, like glass under pressure, but he didn't let it shatter. I'll fix this, he said quietly. How? I don't know yet. But I will. His phone rang again. He answered, listened, then turned to her with eyes that had gone completely dead. They know where he is. Warehouse on the docks, South Boston. He was already moving. I'm going. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. He's my brother. And they're armed. Lucian stopped at the door. You stay here. Let me handle this. Like you've handled everything else? The bitterness in her voice could have stripped paint. I'm coming. You don't get to make that choice for me. They stared at each other. Thunder rumbled outside. Rain streaked the windows like tears. Finally, Lucian nodded. Then let's go get your brother back. They left the boardroom without another word to the board, sprinted through the building to the parking garage. Lucian's car was exactly what she expected. Black, expensive, fast enough to be illegal. He drove like a man possessed, weaving through Boston traffic at speeds that made her grip the door handle hard enough to hurt. Who are these people? She asked. Mercenaries? Contractors? People Conrad Whitmore pays to make problems disappear. Lucian's voice was ice. They won't kill Jace unless I force their hand. This is a message, a warning. What happens if we can't convince them to let him go? Then things get complicated. The warehouse district loomed ahead, industrial wasteland of rusted metal and broken concrete, the kind of place where bad things happened because no one was around to stop them. Lucian's phone buzzed. He answered on speaker. Talk. A voice she didn't recognize. They're in the northeast warehouse. 3 hostiles visible. Could be more inside. They're armed. Handguns. Maybe a rifle. Your brother's alive, but he's hurt. I'm 2 minutes out. Boss, you shouldn't... Lucian hung up. They pulled into the warehouse lot. Rain hammered the windshield. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, her brother was bleeding and terrified and trapped. Because of her. Because she'd signed a contract with a man whose enemies didn't care about collateral damage. Stay in the car, Lucian said. Not a chance. Evelyn, he's my brother, my responsibility, my life I sold to save his. She met his eyes. I'm going in. For once, he didn't argue. They got out into the rain. The warehouse door stood open like a mouth. Yellow light spilled from inside, flickering and unstable. Lucian's hand found hers. Not possessive, not controlling, just there. Solid. Real. Whatever happens, he said quietly, I'm sorry. Then they walked forward together into the warehouse, into the nightmare, into whatever waited in the darkness. And Evelyn realized with crystalline clarity that somewhere between the contract signing and this moment, everything had changed. She wasn't just his employee anymore. And he wasn't just her employer. They'd become something far more dangerous, something that looked almost like... The thought died as a figure emerged from the shadows ahead, gun raised, smile sharp as broken glass. Mr. Vale, Mrs. Vale, so good of you to join us. Your brother's been waiting. The gun swung toward them. And in that moment, with rain soaking through her clothes and terror closing her throat, Evelyn understood the final truth of her arranged marriage. Some contracts, once signed, couldn't be undone. Some debts couldn't be paid. And some choices, once made, destroyed you no matter which path you took. The point of no return wasn't a moment. It was standing in a warehouse with a gun pointed at her heart, realizing she'd do absolutely anything, sacrifice anything, become anything, to save the people she'd somehow started to care about, even the man she'd sworn never to love, especially him. The trigger pulled back with a sound like the world ending. The gunshot never came. Instead, laughter, low, cruel, the sound of a man who'd already won and knew it. The figure lowered the weapon, stepped into the flickering light, and Evelyn's entire world tilted sideways. Not a stranger, Conrad Whitmore himself. She recognized him from the research Lucian's team had compiled. Late 50s, silver-haired, the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers for Fortune 500 profiles. Expensive suit soaked through with rain, eyes that looked at people like they were numbers on a balance sheet. Dramatic entrance, Lucien. I expected nothing less. Conrad's voice carried the smooth confidence of someone who'd never lost anything that mattered. Though bringing your wife was unexpected, reckless, even. Lucien stepped in front of Evelyn, body becoming a shield. Where's her brother? Alive. For now. Conrad gestured deeper into the warehouse with the gun. Come, let's discuss terms like civilized people. They walked through shadows and puddles of rainwater leaking through the rusted roof. The warehouse stretched vast and empty, decades of abandonment turning it into a cathedral of decay. Yellow work lights hung from chains swaying in drafts that came through broken windows. The smell hit Evelyn in waves: rust, mildew, something else underneath that might have been blood. Jace sat in the center of the space, zip-tied to a metal chair that looked bolted to the concrete floor. His face was a canvas of violence, split lip, eye swelling shut, blood crusting his nose and chin, but he was breathing, conscious. When he saw Evelyn, something broke in his expression. "Evie," his voice came out cracked. "I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry." Two men flanked him, both armed, both watching Lucien with the flat intensity of professionals who'd done this before. A third man stood near a workbench covered in tools that definitely weren't for carpentry. "Jace!" Evelyn tried to move toward him, but Lucien's hand shot out, gripping her arm, stopping her. "Don't," he said quietly. "Not yet." Conrad walked past them, circling Jace like a shark. "You've built quite an empire, Lucien. Impressive, really. Ruthless acquisitions, hostile takeovers, destroying competitors without mercy." He paused behind Jace, rested a hand on the chair. "But you made one critical error. Which was? You forgot that some people can't be bought, can't be intimidated, can't be beaten by lawyers and stock manipulation." Conrad's smile was razors. "You thought you could expose Whitmore Pharmaceuticals, leak our internal documents to the SEC, destroy everything I've built. You thought your money made you untouchable. I thought your company killing people for profit margins made you a monster." Lucien's voice stayed level, cold. "I was right. Monster, hero, meaningless words." Conrad shrugged. "I provide medicine that keeps people alive. If some can't afford it, that's economics, not murder. You raised insulin prices 400% in 2 years. People died rationing doses they couldn't afford. People die every day. That's not my responsibility." The casual cruelty of it stole Evelyn's breath. She looked at this man in his expensive suit talking about human lives like quarterly reports and understood why Lucien had spent months building a case against him. "What do you want?" Lucien asked. "Simple. You withdraw the SEC complaint. You burn every piece of evidence you've compiled. You issue a public statement that your investigation found nothing actionable." Conrad's hand tightened on Jace's shoulder hard enough to make him flinch. "Do that, and your brother-in-law goes home with all his fingers attached. And if I don't, then we start with fingers, move to hands. See how far we get before you change your mind." Conrad pulled a knife from his pocket, folding blade, well-maintained, the tool of someone who'd used it before. "I'm betting not very far. You've got a reputation for being cold, Lucien, but everyone has limits. Everyone has something they care about enough to break for." He pressed the blade against Jace's hand, not cutting yet, just resting there with terrible promise. "Stop." Evelyn's voice cracked. "Please, just stop." "Ah, the wife speaks." Conrad looked at her like she'd just become interesting. "Tell me, Mrs. Vale, what's it like being married to Boston's most ruthless businessman? Does he show emotion at home? Or is he this cold everywhere?" "Fuck you," she said. Conrad laughed. "Spirit, I like that, though it won't help your brother much." He increased pressure on the knife. A thin line of red appeared on Jace's hand. "What's it going to be, Lucien, your crusade or his fingers?" The warehouse fell silent except for rain hammering the roof and Jace's ragged breathing. Lucien stood perfectly still, face carved from stone, every muscle controlled. But Evelyn saw his hands, clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. "You won't kill him," Lucien said finally. "Won't I?" "No. Because the moment you do, I have nothing left to lose. And a man with nothing to lose is far more dangerous than one with hostages." Lucien's voice dropped to something lethal. "You kill him. I don't just expose Whitmore Pharmaceuticals. I burn it to the ground. I use every resource, every contact, every favor I've ever earned to destroy not just your company but your life, your assets, your family, everything you've ever built. I'll make it my singular purpose to ensure you die bankrupt and alone." Conrad's smile faltered, just slightly, but enough. Big talk from a man whose wife is crying. Evelyn wiped her face, hadn't even realized tears were falling. She looked at Jace, her baby brother, the one she'd raised after their mother left, the one she'd bailed out of trouble more times than she could count. He looked back at her with eyes that said, "I'm sorry, and I love you, and this is all my fault." "Lucienne," her voice came out steadier than she felt, "give him what he wants." "No. People are dying because of his company. I can't—" She stopped, started again. "I can't let Jace die for this. I can't. If I give him what he wants, more people die. Hundreds, maybe thousands." Lucian finally turned to look at her. "I'm sorry, Evelyn, but I can't trade hundreds of lives for one." The words hit like a physical blow. "Even if that one is my brother?" Even then, she saw it in his eyes. The calculation, the cold mathematics of greater good versus personal loss. He'd already made the choice, already decided Jace was acceptable collateral in a larger war. "You bastard!" The words tasted like ashes. "You absolute bastard! I'm trying to save lives. You're trying to win," her voice echoed through the warehouse. "That's all you've ever done. Win at any cost, destroy anyone in your way, even if it's my family, even if it's—" She choked on the words. "Even if it's me." Something flickered in his expression, pain maybe, or regret, but it didn't change anything. Conrad watched their disintegration with obvious pleasure. Trouble in paradise. How unfortunate. He pressed the knife harder. More blood. Jace bit back a scream. "Last chance, Lucian. Yes or no?" Evelyn looked at her brother, at the man she'd married, at the impossible choice that had no right answer. Then she did the only thing left. "I'll do it." Both men turned to stare at her. "I'll make him withdraw the complaint," she continued, voice gaining strength even as her hands shook. "I'm his wife. I have access to his files, his accounts, his evidence. Give me 48 hours and I'll destroy everything he's built against you." "Evelyn, don't—" Lucian grabbed her arm, but she yanked free. "Why? Because you care? Because I matter?" She laughed, bitter and broken. "I'm a transaction, remember? A contract. You said it yourself. No emotions, no complications, just business." She turned to Conrad. "Let my brother go and I'll give you everything." Conrad studied her with new interest. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I love my brother more than I care about your company or Lucian's crusade or any of this." The truth burned coming out. "Because I'm exactly what Lucian thinks I am, someone who can be bought. You want the evidence destroyed? I'll destroy it. You want the complaint withdrawn? I'll make it happen. Just let him go." "No." Lucienne's voice cut like broken glass. "You don't know what you're—" "I know exactly what I'm doing." She met his eyes and let him see everything. The anger, the betrayal, the absolute certainty that she'd burned down everything he'd built to save Jace. "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." For a long moment, Lucian just stared at her. Something in his expression cracked wide open, bleeding something that looked almost like devastation. But he didn't stop her, didn't argue, just stood there and let her destroy them both. Conrad laughed. "Well, this is unexpected." He pulled the knife away from Jace's hand, folded it, tucked it back in his pocket. "I like you, Mrs. Vale. You're practical, understands priorities." He gestured to his men. "Cut him loose." They moved forward with knives, slicing through zip ties. Jace nearly fell but caught himself, stumbled toward Evelyn on legs that barely worked. She caught him, held him up, felt his blood soak into her shirt. "Evie," his voice broke. "You can't—" "Shut up." She held him tighter. "Just shut up." Conrad pulled out a phone, typed something, then showed her the screen. "My private number. You have until Sunday midnight. Deliver the evidence to this address." Another text. An industrial park location. "And your brother stays safe. If you fail, or if you try to double-cross me, I'll finish what I started tonight. Understood?" "Understood." "Good." He looked at Lucian. "Your wife has more spine than you do. Maybe you should let her run your company." Then he walked away, his men following, disappearing into the shadows like they'd never been there. Engine sounds. Vehicles pulling away. The warehouse falling silent except for rain and ragged breathing. Evelyn stood there holding Jace, feeling Lucian's eyes burning holes through her back. "We should get him to a hospital," she said without turning around. "Evelyn!" "Don't!" She finally looked at him. Don't say anything. Don't try to justify it. Just help me get him to the car. Lucian's jaw worked. She could see him trying to find words, find some argument that would make this okay. But there wasn't one. They both knew it. He helped her get Jace to the car. They drove through rain-slick streets to Mass General in silence, so heavy it felt like drowning. Jace drifted in and out of consciousness in the back seat, mumbling apologies that Evelyn couldn't bear to hear. The ER was Friday night chaos, drunks, overdoses, the usual Boston violence. A nurse took one look at Jace and pulled him back immediately. Evelyn started to follow, but the nurse stopped her. Family only in treatment. I'm his sister. Then you can wait here. We'll update you. The doors swung shut, taking Jace with them, leaving Evelyn alone in the waiting room with Lucien and the wreckage of everything. She sat in a plastic chair that smelled like disinfectant and old fear. Lucien sat 3 seats away, close enough to talk, far enough to make it clear something had shattered between them. Minutes crawled past. 10, 20, an hour. Finally, Lucien spoke. You can't give him what he wants. Watch me. Evelyn, no. She turned to face him fully. You made your choice in that warehouse. You decided my brother's life was worth less than your investigation. So now, I'm making mine. If you destroy that evidence, people die. Real people. Children who can't afford insulin. Cancer patients who can't access treatment. Thousands of them. I know. And you're willing to live with that? The question hung between them like a blade. I don't know, she said honestly. But I know I can't live with watching my brother die because I chose abstracts over family. She wiped her face. Maybe that makes me selfish. Maybe that makes me a monster. I don't care anymore. This isn't who you are. You don't know who I am. You never did. Her laugh came out broken. I'm the woman you bought, remember? The transaction. The employee who smiles and plays pretend and doesn't have opinions about your business decisions. That's not... It is exactly that. She stood, needed distance, needed air that didn't taste like him. You want to know the worst part? I was starting to think maybe you weren't as cold as everyone said. That maybe under all that ice there was something human. She shook her head. But tonight proved me wrong. You'll sacrifice anything for your principles. Even people you claim to... She stopped. Couldn't finish the sentence. Claim to what? Nothing. Forget it. But he stood too, moved toward her. Say it. Why? So you can tell me again that emotions are liabilities? That caring about people makes you weak? The tears came harder now. You were right, Lucian. You were right about everything. I should never have... Her phone buzzed. Text from the hospital number. Your brother is stable. Minor concussion, some bruising, nothing permanent. You can see him in 20 minutes. Relief hit so hard her knees nearly buckled. Lucian caught her elbow, steadying her, and for 1 second she let herself lean into his strength. Then she remembered the warehouse, the choice, the casual way he'd decided Jace was expendable. She pulled away. I need coffee, she said to the air between them. I'll be back. She walked away before he could respond, found the cafeteria, got coffee that tasted like burned rubber and regret, sat at a table in the corner, and tried to figure out how she'd ended up here, in a hospital at 2 a.m., contemplating betraying a man who'd saved her family to save her family, caught between moral absolutes that both ended in someone dying. Her phone buzzed again. Not the hospital, a number she didn't recognize. Text. I know you're conflicted. I know Lucien makes a compelling case. But let me show you something that might clarify your decision. Then a link. She almost didn't click it, almost deleted the message and pretended it never existed. But something, curiosity, desperation, the need to justify what she was about to do, made her tap the link. A video opened. Security footage, timestamped from 6 months ago. Interior of what looked like a corporate office. A man sitting at a desk, middle-aged, tired-looking, holding a photograph of 2 children. He was talking to someone off camera. I understand the price increase. I do, but we can't afford it. My daughter needs this medication to live. Another voice, cold, clinical. Then I suggest you find a way to afford it. The market dictates price, not desperation. The man's face crumpled. She's 6 years old. She'll die without... That's unfortunate. But Whitmore Pharmaceuticals is not a charity. If you can't pay, we have other customers who can. The man started crying, silent, terrible sobs that shook his whole body. The video ended. Text. That man's daughter died 3 weeks later. Want to see more? I have hundreds. Evelyn's stomach turned to ice. Another video loaded automatically. Another desperate parent. Another child whose life had a price tag they couldn't afford. Then another. And another. A parade of human suffering reduced to quarterly earnings. The final video was dated 3 months ago. A teenage boy, maybe 16, sitting in his car. He looked at the camera. Suicide video, Evelyn realized with horror, and explained through tears that he couldn't afford the insulin he needed, couldn't watch his parents destroy themselves trying to pay for it, couldn't be a burden anymore. If you're watching this, the boy said, tell my parents I'm sorry. Tell them it's not their fault. Tell them the system killed me, not them. Then the video ended. Text. His name was Marcus Chen, straight A student, wanted to be a doctor. Conrad Whitmore's company raised insulin prices 400% the year before Marcus died. He's one of 47 people we've documented who died because they couldn't afford medication that costs pennies to produce. This is what you're protecting if you give Conrad what he wants. The phone slipped from her hands. She sat there, coffee growing cold, surrounded by the late-night cafeteria hum, and felt the impossible weight of the choice crushing her. Save Jace or save strangers? Family or principles? Love or justice? There was no right answer. Both choices led to bodies. Both choices led to blood on her hands. She thought about the boy, Marcus Chen, and wondered if he'd had a sister, if someone had loved him the way she loved Jace, if that person would have made the same choice she was about to make. Probably. And maybe that was the real tragedy. That love made you selfish, made you prioritize the people close enough to touch over the people dying in the abstract distance, made you into exactly the kind of monster you swore you'd never become. Her phone buzzed. Lucienne. Text. Where are you? She didn't respond, just sat there drowning in a decision that would define who she was for the rest of her life. 20 minutes later, she returned to the waiting room. Lucienne stood by the window, staring at nothing. He turned when she entered, and something in his expression caught her. Vulnerability, maybe, or fear. The mask had cracked, and what showed through looked almost human. Evelyn, I need to see my brother. Wait, please. He moved toward her. I've been thinking about what you said, about the choice I made. And you're right. I was wrong. The words stopped her cold. I was so focused on the larger good that I forgot. He struggled with it. I forgot that the people we love aren't abstracts. They're not numbers. He looked at her directly, eyes stripped of every defense. They're everything. Something in her chest cracked wide open. I'll withdraw the complaint, he continued. I'll give Conrad what he wants. Your brother's life is worth more than my crusade. Lucienne, the evidence can be rebuilt, eventually, but Jace can't be brought back from dead. His voice dropped. I was ready to let him die to prove a point. That makes me exactly what Conrad is, someone who values principles over people. I don't want to be that anymore. The confession hung between them, raw and bleeding. Evelyn wanted to believe him, wanted to fall into the sudden warmth of his surrender and let it mean something. But the videos played on loop in her mind, all those faces, all those lives, Marcus Chen's tears reflecting screen light as he recorded his goodbye. If you withdraw, she said carefully, Conrad wins. All those people, Marcus Chen, the others, they died for nothing. I know. You can live with that? No. His honesty was brutal. But I can't live with choosing strangers over you, over Jace, over... He stopped, started again. Over the people who've become what? He looked at her and she saw everything he'd hidden for weeks, months, maybe years. All the emotion he'd weaponized isolation against, all the humanity he'd buried under corporate armor, bleeding through cracks he couldn't control anymore. Real, he said finally, the people who've become real to me. The air between them turned electric. A nurse appeared before Evelyn could respond. Mrs. Mercer, your brother's asking for you. The moment shattered. Evelyn followed the nurse through antiseptic hallways to a room where Jace lay hooked to monitors that beeped steady reassurance. His face looked worse under fluorescent lighting, bruises blooming purple and yellow, stitches holding together a cut above his eye. But he was alive, breathing, safe. "Hey," he said when she entered, voice rough but steady. "Hey yourself." She took his hand, careful of the bandages. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got my ass kicked by professionals." He tried to smile, but it died quickly. "Evie, I'm so fucking sorry. This is all my fault. I never should have. Stop." "But Jace." She squeezed his hand. "Just stop, okay? We'll deal with the rest later. Right now, I'm just glad you're alive." His eyes filled. "That guy in the warehouse, the one who wanted to hurt me, he's not going to stop, is he?" "I don't know." "And Lucian's investigation, if he drops it, more people die. But if he doesn't, Conrad comes after us." Jace's voice cracked. "There's no good option." "No," she agreed. "There isn't." They sat in silence, punctuated by monitor beeps and hallway sounds. After a while, Jace drifted into uneasy sleep. Evelyn stayed, holding his hand, feeling the weight of every choice she'd ever made leading to this moment. Her phone buzzed. Text from Conrad's number. TikTok, Mrs. Vale. Sunday midnight. Don't forget. Then another text. This one from Lucien. "I meant what I said. I'll withdraw everything. Just tell me that's what you want." She stared at both messages, caught between two impossible men making two impossible offers, and realized with crystalline clarity that there was only one way forward, a way that required her to become someone she'd never wanted to be, someone who lied to everyone, someone who betrayed both sides while trying to save them both. She stood, kissed Jace's forehead, walked out of the room where Lucian waited in the hallway. He looked exhausted, tie loose, hair disheveled, eyes shadowed with something that might have been fear. "I need you to do something for me," she said. "Anything. I need you to trust me, completely, even when it doesn't make sense." His brow furrowed. "What are you planning?" "Something stupid." She met his eyes. "Something that probably won't work, but it's the only option I can see where maybe, nobody has to die." "Evelyn, do you trust me?" The question hung between them, weighted with everything unsaid, everything they'd become in 6 weeks of fake marriage that had started feeling terrifyingly real. Finally, Lucian nodded. "I trust you." The words felt like a vow, or a curse. "Then here's what we're going to do." She pulled out her phone, opened the videos Conrad had sent, showed him Marcus Chen's face frozen in final despair. "We're going to give Conrad exactly what he wants. His evidence destroyed, his company safe, his crimes buried forever." Lucian's face went pale. "You can't." "And while we do that," she continued, "you're going to leak everything to every media outlet in the country, not just the SEC. Everyone. CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, every local Boston paper. You're going to make sure that even if Conrad gets what he wants, the world knows exactly what Whitmore Pharmaceuticals has done." Understanding dawned in his eyes. Public pressure instead of legal action. "Exactly. We can't stop him legally if I destroy the evidence, but we can destroy him publicly. Court of opinion. Federal investigations triggered by media firestorm instead of insider complaints." She gripped his arms. "It's not perfect. It might not even work. But it's the only way I can see where Jace stays alive and those children get justice. You'll be playing both sides. If Conrad finds out, he'll kill me. I know." The acceptance came easier than it should have. "But if I don't try, I have to live knowing I chose wrong. Either I saved my brother and let Conrad keep killing people, or I sacrificed Jace for strangers." She shook her head. "This way, maybe I can save both. Or maybe I destroy everything. But at least I tried." Lucian stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "You're insane." "Probably. This could backfire in 100 different ways." "I know. You could end up dead." "I know that too." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see silver flecks in his gray eyes, close enough to smell coffee on his breath and rain still damp in his hair. His hands came up, framing her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything she thought she knew about him. "Then I'm going with you, every step. If this falls apart, we fall together." "Lucien, you don't have to." Yes, I do. His voice dropped to something raw. Because somewhere in this disaster of a fake marriage, you stopped being a contract and became, he stopped, swallowed hard. You became someone I can't lose, even if that makes me weak, even if that destroys everything I've built. I'm choosing you. The confession cracked something open inside her chest. All the walls she'd built, all the defenses she'd maintained, crumbling under the weight of his honesty. We could both die, she whispered. I know. This is insane. I know that too. They stood there in a hospital hallway at 3 a.m., two people who'd started as a transaction and somehow become something that looked like partnership, like trust, like... She couldn't finish the thought. Too dangerous, too real. Okay, she said finally. Then we do this together. But Lucien, if this goes wrong, if Conrad figures out what we're doing, you have to promise me something. Anything. You save Jace. Whatever happens to me, you make sure my brother stays safe. His jaw clenched. Evelyn, promise me. For a long moment he just looked at her. Then reluctantly he nodded. I promise. The lie tasted bitter on both their tongues. They both knew that if this went wrong, promises wouldn't matter. Nothing would. They left the hospital as dawn broke gray and cold over Boston. Somewhere in the city, Conrad Whitmore slept peacefully, believing he'd won. Somewhere in the digital ether, evidence of his crimes waited to be either destroyed or weaponized. And somewhere in the space between Evelyn and Lucien, a fake marriage had become the most dangerous kind of real. The kind that made you willing to burn down everything to protect it. The kind that got people killed. They had 48 hours to pull off the impossible. 48 hours to betray everyone while saving everyone. 48 hours until Sunday midnight, when Evelyn would walk into Conrad's trap with lies and loyalty and the terrible certainty that some choices destroyed you regardless of outcome. She looked at Lucien driving through empty pre-dawn streets, profile sharp against gray light, and wondered when exactly she'd stopped hating him. When she'd started caring whether he lived or died. When the pretend had become real enough to kill for. The answer didn't matter. They were past the point of return now, past safety, past sanity, heading straight into a catastrophe of their own making with nothing but a desperate plan in each other. And somehow, impossibly, that felt like enough. Even though they both knew it probably wasn't. Even though they both knew how this story usually ended. Even though Sunday midnight was counting down like a bomb that would detonate regardless of how much they'd learned to care. The city woke around them, indifferent to their disaster, and Evelyn closed her eyes and tried to remember what it felt like to be someone who made simple choices. Someone whose love didn't come with body counts. Someone who hadn't signed a contract that would either save her or destroy everything she'd become. But that person was gone. Burned away in a warehouse at midnight while rain hammered the roof, and impossible choices crystallized into the only path forward. Now there was only forward, into whatever waited at the end of 48 hours, into betrayal or salvation or the brutal intersection of both, into the final truth that some debts could never be paid, some marriages could never be faked, and some loves were worth dying for even when they'd started as lies. Especially then. They had 36 hours left when everything started falling apart. Saturday morning broke cold and vicious over Boston. Evelyn stood in Lucien's study, surrounded by file boxes containing 3 years of evidence. Internal Whitmore Pharmaceuticals emails, financial records showing price manipulation, testimonials from families who'd lost children to medications they couldn't afford. Everything Lucien had spent months compiling, everything she was supposed to destroy. Her hand shook as she photographed page after page with her phone, uploading to encrypted cloud storage Lucien had set up. The originals would burn. The copies would live forever, distributed to every major media outlet simultaneously Sunday night, hours after she delivered the destroyed evidence to Conrad, hours before he realized he'd been played. If the plan worked. If Conrad didn't figure it out first. If they all survived that long. How much left? Lucien appeared in the doorway, coffee in one hand, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. He hadn't slept. Neither had she. Maybe 4 more boxes, then we staged the destruction. She looked at the mountain of paper that represented hundreds of deaths, thousands of lives destroyed by corporate greed. You're sure about the media contacts? 37 outlets, all embargoed until Sunday at 11 p.m. The moment the clock hits, Every major news organization in the country gets the full package simultaneously. He moved into the room, set his coffee down, started photographing the next box. CNN's already sniffing around. Word leaked that something big is coming. Conrad will know you're behind it. Let him. By the time he figures it out, the damage will be done. Federal investigations, congressional hearings. His company won't survive the week. Neither will we if he catches on before Sunday midnight. Lucian's hand stilled on the documents. Second thoughts? About 1,000. But we're past the point where thoughts matter. She kept photographing. Click, click, click. Each image a nail in Conrad's coffin. Each image a potential death sentence if discovered too soon. What about your board? Martha and the others. Emergency meeting tomorrow. I'm resigning as CEO. The words hit like a punch. Evelyn looked up sharply. What? It's the only way. If I step down voluntarily, cite personal reasons, family priorities. He gestured vaguely. They don't have ammunition to force me out. I control the narrative, keep my shares, maintain influence without the target on my back. You'd give up everything you built? Not everything. His eyes met hers. Just the parts that don't matter anymore. The weight of what he wasn't saying pressed down between them. They'd been dancing around it for days, the shift from contract to something real, from transaction to whatever this was becoming. But neither had the courage to name it, not with a ticking clock and Conrad's threat hanging over them like a guillotine blade. Lucienne? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her stomach dropped. Text. Checking in, Mrs. Vale. Hope you're making progress. Just a friendly reminder that your deadline is firm. Very firm. Then an image loaded. Jay says, photographed through a window, in the hospital, sleeping, unaware he was being watched. The message was clear. We can reach him anytime. Evelyn's hands clenched so hard her nails drew blood from her palms. They're watching the hospital. Lucian read the message over her shoulder, face going dangerously cold. I'll call security. Get additional guards. That'll tip them off something's wrong. Evelyn, they just sent you a picture of your brother through a fucking hospital window. Something is wrong. She forced herself to breathe. Think. The panic wanted to swallow her whole, but panic got people killed. We move him, quietly. Transfer to a private facility. Your people, your security, no paper trail Conrad can follow. That'll take hours to arrange. Then start now. He was already dialing, voice shifting into the cold efficiency she'd first heard in the cafe. Commands issued without room for argument, resources deployed with the ruthlessness that had built his empire. Within minutes, a plan materialized. Private ambulance, discreet transfer, secure facility in Newton with round-the-clock protection. He moves in 2 hours, Lucian, Yen said, hanging up. Best I can do. 2 hours. 120 minutes for Conrad's people to make a move. 120 minutes of vulnerability before Jace reached safety. Evelyn texted her brother. They're transferring you to a better facility for observation. Go with them. Don't argue. Don't call me. I'll explain later. The response came fast. What's happening? Evie, you're scaring me. Trust me. Please, just trust me. 3 dots. Then, okay. She closed her eyes, sent every shred of hope she had left into the universe that she wasn't making another catastrophic mistake, that this desperate gamble wouldn't end with Jace's blood on her hands. Back to work, Lucian said quietly. Faster we finish. Faster we can focus on keeping him alive. They photographed for 3 more hours straight, box after box, crime after crime. Each piece of evidence damning enough to bury Whitmore Pharmaceuticals, insufficient alone but devastating in aggregate. By noon, they had everything backed up in 5 separate encrypted locations, distributed across servers in 3 countries. Then came the performance. They loaded the original documents into Lucien's fireplace, 43 boxes of paper, carefully arranged to burn completely. Evelyn struck the match, hands steady through sheer force of will, and watched 3 years of work ignite. Flames consumed emails about price-fixing schemes, heat-warped photographs of children who'd died. Smoke carried away the evidence that could have brought Conrad Whitmore to his knees legally, but not publicly. Never publicly. Lucian filmed the burning on his phone, proof for Conrad that the job was done, the threat eliminated, the case destroyed beyond recovery. The video showed Evelyn's face, showed the documents curling to ash, showed nothing that suggested backup copies existed. "Send it," she said when the fire died. "Let him think he's won." Lucien sent the video to Conrad's number, added a text. "As requested, we're done. Leave her family alone." The response came within seconds. "Good dog. Bring the ashes to confirm. Tomorrow night, midnight. You know the address. Come alone, Mrs. Vale. If I see your husband or any security, your brother dies screaming. And no phones. I'll be checking." Evelyn read the message 3 times, stomach turning to ice. "He wants me to walk into a trap with no backup and no way to call for help." "Then you don't go." "Jace? We'll be safe in the facility, with my security, with protection Conrad can't breach." Lucienne grabbed her shoulders, forced her to look at him. "You walk in there alone and you don't walk out. He's going to kill you the moment he confirms the evidence is gone. You don't know that. I know exactly that. I know men like Conrad. The moment you stop being useful, you become a liability, and liabilities get eliminated." "Then what do you suggest?" His jaw clenched. She could see him calculating, running scenarios, trying to find an angle that didn't end in catastrophe. Finally, "We don't confirm the evidence is destroyed. We tell him there are backup copies. Insurance. He'll kill Jace. Not if we make him believe killing Jace triggers the evidence release. Mutually assured destruction. Mexican standoff." Lucien's voice gained intensity. "We walk in together. Fuck his demands. With proof that the evidence releases automatically if anything happens to you, me, or Jace. He can't touch any of us without destroying himself." "He won't believe it." "He will if we show him the dead man's switch." Lucien was already moving to his computer, fingers flying across keys. "Automated system. If we don't check in every 12 hours, the evidence dumps to all the media contacts, completely out of our control once it's set up. Conrad kills us. He kills his company." It was insane. Reckless. The kind of plan that only worked in movies. It was also the only option that didn't end with someone definitely dying. "How long to set it up? 6 hours? Maybe less. Then do it. I'll handle Conrad." She pulled out her phone, typed a response. "I'll be there. Midnight. Alone." "But Lucien wants guarantees. What assurance do I have you won't kill me anyway?" The reply took longer this time. "You have my word." She laughed, bitter and broken. "Your word. The word of a man who kills children for profit margins. Careful, Mrs. Vale. I'm being generous. Don't make me reconsider." "Midnight. I'll be there." She threw her phone on the couch before she could second-guess herself. Lucien watched her with an expression that looked almost like fear. "Evelyn, don't." She held up a hand. "Don't try to talk me out of it. Don't tell me it's too dangerous. I know what this is. I'm doing it anyway." "Why?" The question hung between them, loaded with everything unsaid. "Because Jace is all the family I have left. Because I signed a contract that was supposed to save him, and instead it's gotten him kidnapped and beaten and hunted. Because—" her voice cracked. "Because I can't keep making choices that get people killed. Not anymore." Lucien crossed the space between them in 3 strides, pulled her against his chest hard enough to hurt. She felt his heart hammering, felt his breath ragged in her hair, felt the tremor in his hands that said he was just as terrified as she was. "Then we do this together," he said into her hair. "No more splitting up. No more solo missions. We walk in there as a united front, and we walk out the same way." He said alone. Fuck what he said. "I'm not letting you die for my mistakes." She pulled back enough to see his face. "Your mistakes? I'm the one who went after Whitmore Pharmaceuticals. I'm the one who painted a target on my back and yours by extension. I'm the one who made you a weapon in a war you never signed up for." His hands framed her face. "This is my fault, all of it, and I'll be damned if I let you pay the price alone." Something in her chest cracked wide open. All the walls she'd built, all the defenses that had kept her safe, crumbling under the weight of his confession. "Lucien!" His phone exploded with sound, multiple calls all at once. He grabbed it, answered, listened. Every drop of color drained from his face. "When?" His voice had gone flat. Dead. "How many?" A pause. "I'm on my way." He hung up, looked at Evelyn with eyes that had stopped seeing her. The facility in Newton, Conrad's people hit it 20 minutes ago. 3 guards down. They took Jace. The world tilted sideways. What? They knew. They fucking knew we'd move him. They were waiting. Lucien was already moving, grabbing his jacket, his keys, his gun from a safe she hadn't known existed. They left a message, a location. South Boston docks. Same place as before. It's a trap. Obviously. We can't just walk into... We don't have a choice. He turned, and what she saw in his face made her blood run cold. Not the corporate strategist, not the ruthless businessman, something older, something dangerous. He has your brother. He's calling in his win. We show up or Jace dies. The plan, the dead man's switch, won't be ready in time. And even if it was, Conrad doesn't care anymore. He's escalating, making a statement. Lucien checked his gun with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done it before. He wants us dead. All of us. Evidence or no evidence, he's decided we're too dangerous to let live. Evelyn felt her lungs constrict. So this is it, the end game. This is it. They stared at each other across the study, 2 people who'd started as strangers, become accomplices, transformed into something neither could name, but both felt burning between them like a live wire. I'm sorry, Lucien said quietly. I'm sorry I dragged you into this. I'm sorry I made you believe this could end any way but badly. I'm sorry. She kissed him, desperate, furious, terrified, poured every ounce of rage and fear and something that felt dangerously close to love into the contact. His arms came around her like steel, crushing her against him, kissing her back with the violence of a man who'd spent a lifetime denying himself everything that mattered. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she tasted salt. Couldn't tell if it was her tears or his. Don't apologize, she said. Not for this. Not for any of it. Evelyn, whatever happens tonight, I made my choices. I signed the contract. I agreed to the plan. I knew the risks. She gripped his jacket. So don't you dare apologize for giving me something worth fighting for. His hands shook as they cupped her face. I love you. The words landed like an explosion. I know I'm not supposed to. I know it breaks every rule we set. I know it's the worst possible timing. His voice cracked. But I love you. And if we die tonight, I need you to know that. Need you to know you stopped being a contract the moment you walked into my life and refused to be afraid of me. Tears blurred her vision. You're an asshole. I know. You're cold and ruthless and emotionally unavailable. I know that too. And I love you anyway. The confession ripped out of her. I love you and I hate you for making me love you. And I swear, if we survive this, I'm going to kill you myself. He laughed, broken, desperate sound. Deal. Then they were moving. Out of the penthouse, into the elevator, through the lobby, past doormen who pretended not to see the gun under Lucien's jacket. Into his car, speeding through Boston streets turned hostile, every shadow potentially hiding Conrad's people. Evelyn's phone buzzed. Text from Conrad's number. TikTok. Your brother has about an hour of screaming left in him. After that, he's all out of interesting sounds. Then a video, 10 seconds. Jay strapped to the same chair as before, blood streaming from his nose, voice hoarse from screaming, someone off camera laughing. Rage exploded through Evelyn's veins, hot and clarifying. Faster! Lucien floored it. Traffic laws became suggestions. Red lights became obstacles to ignore. The city blurred past, and all Evelyn could see was her brother's face. All she could hear was his screams. All she could feel was the weight of the gun Lucien had handed her before they left. She'd never fired a gun. Tonight she might have to. Tonight she might have to become someone who pulled triggers and watched people die. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt inevitable. They reached the docks at 9:47 p.m. Early, aggressive, done with playing by Conrad's rules. The same warehouse loomed ahead, windows dark except for flickering light from inside. Lucien killed the engine 3 blocks away. Approach on foot. Element of surprise. His voice had gone tactical. Military. A side of him she'd never seen. Stay behind me. Don't fire unless you have a clean shot. And if things go wrong, they won't. Evelyn, they won't because we're not leaving without Jace. Because we're done being victims. Because Conrad Whitmore is about to learn what happens when you threaten the wrong people. The words came out harder than she felt. But fake confidence was better than real terror. They approached the warehouse through shadows, skirting puddles that reflected city lights. Evelyn's heart hammered so hard she thought Conrad might hear it from inside. The gun felt wrong in her hand, too heavy, too real, too much responsibility concentrated in metal and powder. Lucien moved like smoke, all controlled grace and deadly focus. He'd done this before, she realized. Maybe not this exactly, but something close. He navigated danger the way he navigated boardrooms, calculating risks, exploiting weaknesses, moving with absolute certainty. They reached the door. Voices inside. 3 distinct, maybe 4. Jace among them, pleading. Lucien held up 3 fingers. 2. 1. He kicked the door open and everything exploded into chaos. The warehouse interior hit like a physical assault. Too bright, too loud, too many people moving at once. Evelyn's brain tried to process. Jace still in the chair, Conrad standing beside him with that same knife from before. 3 armed men positioned around the space, all turning toward the door with weapons rising. Lucien fired first. 2 shots, impossibly fast, dropping the nearest man before he could aim. The sound deafened. Cordite burned Evelyn's throat. Time stretched elastic and strange. The other 2 gunmen opened fire. Bullets sparked off metal, punched through drywall, screamed past close enough for Evelyn to feel displaced air. She dove behind a concrete pillar, gun clutched in shaking hands, world reduced to heartbeat and breath, and the certainty that she was about to die. Lucien moved like violence incarnate, returning fire with cold precision. Another man dropped. Then the third, clutching his shoulder, weapon clattering away. Then silence. Ringing, terrible silence. Evelyn peered around the pillar. 3 men down. Conrad still standing, knife pressed against Jace's throat hard enough to draw blood. Lucien 10 feet away, gun trained steady on Conrad's head. Mexican standoff. Mutually assured destruction. Exactly what they'd planned. Except Conrad was smiling. Impressive, Lucien. Lucien. Didn't know you had that in you. His voice stayed calm, conversational, like they were discussing stock prices instead of surrounded by bodies. But you won't shoot. Not while I'm holding the knife. Try me. Oh, I don't think so. See, you've gone soft. You care about things now. People. Conrad's smile widened. That makes you weak. Predictable. Easy to manipulate. Let him go, Conrad. This is between us. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, this stopped being about business the moment you married this woman. His eyes flicked to Evelyn. Come out, Mrs. Vale. Let's talk like civilized people. Evelyn's legs moved before her brain agreed. She stepped into the open, gun raised, but hands shaking so badly she'd never hit anything. There she is, the woman who thought she could outplay me. Conrad's knife pressed harder. More blood. Jace whimpered. Did you really think I wouldn't find your backup copies? That I wouldn't have someone monitoring your cloud storage? That I'd just trust you destroyed everything? The bottom fell out of Evelyn's stomach. That's right. I know about the media embargo. I know about the dead man's switch you're building. I know about all of it. He laughed. You're not dealing with an amateur, Mrs. Vale. I've been burying evidence and silencing witnesses since before you learned to tie your shoes. Lucien's gun didn't waver. Then you know you can't win. Kill us, and the evidence releases anyway. Maybe, or maybe I have people working right now to kill your automated systems, hack your servers, delete your backups. Conrad's smile turned vicious. You built your fail-safe in 6 hours. You think that's enough to stop someone with my resources? My network? I'll have everything scrubbed clean by midnight, and then I'll kill all 3 of you and walk away like none of this ever happened. Evelyn felt reality fragmenting. The plan had failed. The backup had failed. Everything they'd built was crumbling in real time, and Jace was about to die because she'd been too stupid, too desperate, too convinced that love and desperation were enough to win against money and power. So here's what happens next. Conrad's voice cut through her spiral. You both put down your guns. You get on your knees. You watch me kill your brother very slowly. Then I kill your wife, Lucien. And finally, I kill you. In that order. So you feel every second of it. No. Lucien's voice stayed steady. Inhuman. Here's what happens next. I shoot you in the head. Maybe I hit your brother in the process. Maybe I don't. But you die either way. and I'd rather risk his life than guarantee all three of ours. The cold calculation in his voice made Evelyn's blood freeze. He meant it, would actually sacrifice Jace to take Conrad down. Lucian, don't! Shut up. He didn't look at her. Couldn't afford to break eye contact with Conrad. This ends now, one way or another. Conrad's smile faltered. You're bluffing. Am I? You said it yourself. I've built an empire on ruthless decisions, on sacrificing pieces to win the game. Lucien's finger tightened on the trigger. Your move, Conrad. Drop the knife or I drop you. And if Jace dies, he dies. But so do you. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Conrad's eyes. He looked at Lucien, really looked, and saw the truth. Saw a man who'd already made peace with the casualties. A man who'd burned away every soft edge until only cold logic remained. A man capable of anything. The knife trembled fractionally against Jace's throat. Then Conrad did something Evelyn never expected. He pulled the knife away, dropped it, stepped back with hands raised. Fine. You win this round. His voice had lost its edge. But this isn't over, Lucien. You can't kill me without consequences. Your lawyers will find themselves very busy defending you against federal charges. A new voice echoed through the warehouse. Everyone turned. A woman stepped from the shadows. 50-something, steel-gray hair, FBI windbreaker over business clothes. Behind her, a dozen agents materialized, weapons drawn, forming a perimeter. Martha, the CFO from Lucien's board. She walked forward with the confidence of someone holding all the cards. Conrad Whitmore, you're under arrest for extortion, kidnapping, attempted murder, and about 30 other charges that'll keep you locked up until you're old enough to die in prison. Conrad's face went white. You can't, I can, and I am. Martha looked at Lucien, something like respect in her expression. The board meeting yesterday was a setup. We've been working with the FBI for months, needed someone to draw Conrad out, make him escalate. You and your wife did that beautifully. Evelyn's brain short-circuited. You used us as bait? I used you as bait. Martha didn't apologize. Conrad's been untouchable for years, hidden behind lawyers and shell corporations and congressional donations. We needed him to make a mistake, to do something so blatant we could take him down publicly. Kidnapping, assault, murder attempts, hard to defend in court. You risked their lives. Lucien's voice could have cut steel. I risked everyone's lives to stop a man who's killed hundreds. Martha gestured to the agents hauling Conrad toward the door in handcuffs. Sometimes the math is ugly. Sometimes people become collateral. Welcome to how justice actually works. Evelyn wanted to rage, wanted to scream that they weren't pawns, weren't pieces to be sacrificed for someone else's endgame. But she was too tired, too broken, too relieved that Jace was alive. She stumbled toward her brother as agents cut him loose. He collapsed into her arms, sobbing, bleeding, alive. She held him and felt her own tears finally break free, silent and relentless. It's over, she whispered into his hair. It's over. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. Because Lucien stood across the warehouse staring at Martha with an expression that promised consequences. Because Conrad was screaming threats as they dragged him away. Because the evidence was still out there, still ticking toward midnight release, still about to detonate across every media outlet in the country. And because somewhere in the last hour, Evelyn had become someone who'd pointed a gun at another human being and been ready, willing, desperate to pull the trigger. That person didn't just disappear because the immediate threat was gone. That person was who she was now. The warehouse emptied slowly. Paramedics for Jace, statements for the FBI, Lucien vanishing into a quiet conversation with Martha that looked like it involved a lot of barely controlled fury. Evelyn sat on the concrete floor, gun finally set aside, hands still shaking from adrenaline crash. An agent brought her water. She drank without tasting it. At some point, Lucien returned, sat beside her without touching. They watched the controlled chaos of evidence collection and crime scene documentation like they were observing from another dimension. Martha says the media embargo stands, he said finally. FBI will coordinate the release. Make sure it's airtight legally. So we won, did we? He looked at her. Conrad's arrested, but his company's still running. His board will fight the charges. Tie it up in court for years. Some justice eventually, but not the kind that feels like winning. Jace is alive. For now, until the next Conrad, the next pharmaceutical company, the next time profit matters more than people. His cynicism hurt because it was earned, because they'd survived but nothing had fundamentally changed, because the system that had created Conrad Whitmore was still intact, still grinding people into dust for quarterly returns. "I'm tired, Lucien." Evelyn leaned her head against his shoulder. "I'm so fucking tired of fighting." "I know. Make it stop." "I don't know how." They sat in the warehouse that had almost become their tomb, surrounded by evidence of the violence they'd survived, and Evelyn realized the cruelest truth of all. Winning didn't feel like victory. It felt like having survived long enough to face the next battle, and the next, and the next. Until eventually, inevitably, you lost. But for tonight, in this moment, with Jace alive and Conrad in custody and Lucien solid beside her, she'd take it. She'd take whatever seconds of peace she could steal before reality caught up and reminded her that contracts don't end just because you tear them up, that marriages don't become real just because you want them to, that love doesn't save you from the consequences of the choices you make. It just gives you something worth dying for. And sometimes, on nights like this, in warehouses that smell like blood and gunpowder, that's enough. It has to be. Because the alternative is giving up. And Evelyn Mercer had come too far, sacrificed too much, become too much of someone new to give up now. So she sat, and breathed, and held on to the man she'd married for money and stayed with for something that felt dangerously close to forever, and waited for whatever came next. 3 weeks after the warehouse, Evelyn stood in front of Boston Municipal Court, watching her brother take his first steps into a future that wasn't defined by debt. Jace looked different. Thinner, maybe. Older, definitely. The bruises had faded to yellow-green ghosts, but something in his eyes had changed, like he'd seen how close death lived to every stupid decision and couldn't unsee it. He wore a donated suit from Lucien's tailor, too big in the shoulders, attending his mandated counseling check-in with the kind of grim determination that came from staring into the abyss and deciding to crawl back out. "You don't have to wait," he said, adjusting a tie that kept going crooked. "This'll take an hour, maybe more." "I'll wait." Evelyn fixed the tie for the third time. "I've got nowhere else to be." That was a lie. She had a meeting with Lucien's lawyers at 2. Paperwork to sign, the kind that would make their arrangement permanent or destroy it completely, depending on what she decided in the next 4 hours. The original contract had stipulated 2 years. They'd made it 6 weeks before everything exploded. Now the lawyers wanted clarity. Stay married for real or divorce quietly, and walk away with the settlement promised in the original terms. $5 million. Freedom. A clean slate to build whatever life she wanted without the weight of a billionaire's baggage. All she had to do was sign. Jace studied her with the perception addiction had sharpened, reading micro-expressions, sensing weakness, trained to find the cracks. "You haven't decided yet." "Decided what?" "Whether you're staying with him." He said it without judgment, just observation. "You've got that look, the one you had when Mom left and you were trying to figure out if we could survive without her." The comparison cut deeper than he knew. Their mother had walked out when Evelyn was 19 and Jace was 14, left a note on the kitchen table explaining that she'd tried, really tried, but motherhood had never fit her right and she needed to find herself somewhere that didn't smell like failure and dirty diapers. Last they'd heard, she was in Arizona running a yoga studio and pretending her children had never existed. "This is different," Evelyn said. "Is it? You married a stranger for money. Now you're deciding if the money's worth staying." He shrugged. "Sounds pretty similar to me." "Lucien's not—" She stopped. Wasn't sure how to finish that sentence. Wasn't sure what Lucien was anymore. Husband felt wrong. Employer felt worse. Partner came closest, but even that didn't capture the complexity of what they'd become. "He loves you." Jace said it matter of fact. "Saw it in the warehouse. The way he was ready to kill everyone, including me, to keep you alive. That's not obligation. That's—" He struggled for the word. "That's the kind of crazy you don't fake." "He barely talks to me anymore." "Maybe because he's terrified you're going to leave." The words hit like a slap. Evelyn wanted to argue but couldn't, because Jace was right. Lucien had been distant since the warehouse, throwing himself into work with the manic intensity of someone avoiding something too big to face. They lived in the same penthouse but existed in separate orbits. speaking only about logistics and paperwork and the careful choreography of people trying not to touch the live wire between them. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted. "I don't know if we're real or just trauma bonded or playing out the last act of something that should have ended the day Conrad got arrested." "You love him?" The question hung there, unavoidable. "I don't know. Maybe. It's complicated." "Love's always complicated. Doesn't mean it's not real." Jace squeezed her shoulder. "But Evie? Whatever you decide, make sure it's for you. Not for me, not for Dad. Not because you think you owe him something. Just for you." He walked into the courthouse before she could respond, leaving her alone on the steps with November wind cutting through her coat and a decision that felt too big for one person to carry. Her phone buzzed. Text from Celeste. "Reminder, meeting at 2 p.m. Bring your signed documents. Mr. Vale will be present. No warmth, no personal touch. Just business as usual for the attorney who'd started this whole disaster with a phone call and an impossible offer." Evelyn walked. Not toward the law offices, not toward home. Just walked through Boston, letting her feet choose direction while her brain tried to untangle 6 weeks of her life that had transformed from transaction to something she couldn't name. She ended up at the nursing home, room 114. Her father in the same position he'd been in for months, propped against pillows, eyes tracking movement but showing no recognition, trapped inside a body that had forgotten how to do anything but breathe. "Hey, Dad." She pulled up the familiar plastic chair. "Sorry I haven't visited much. It's been..." She laughed without humor. "It's been a weird month." He blinked. That was all. But she talked anyway. Told him about the wedding, the warehouse, Conrad's arrest and the media firestorm that had followed, Whitmore Pharmaceuticals stock crashing, federal investigations multiplying, congressional hearings scheduled. Told him about Jace getting sober for real this time, attending meetings, working with a sponsor who'd survived similar darkness. Told him about Lucian. "I don't know what to do." Her voice cracked. "The smart choice is obvious. Take the money, walk away. Build a life that doesn't involve constant danger and emotional unavailability and a man who treats feelings like liabilities." Her father's eyes tracked her face. She liked to pretend he understood, that somewhere in the wreckage of his stroke, the father who'd taught her to ride a bike and check under the bed for monsters was still listening. "But I don't want smart. I want..." She stopped, started again. "I want mornings where he looks at me like I'm real. I want nights where we don't sleep in separate rooms pretending this was only ever business. I want him to admit he's terrified and I'm terrified and maybe we could be terrified together instead of alone." Silence. Just the mechanical wheeze of oxygen and the distant sound of nurses making rounds. "He told me he loved me." The confession burned. "Right before we thought we were going to die, he told me he loved me. And I said it back. And now we're both pretending it never happened because acknowledging it means..." She wiped her face. "Means this was real. Means we can get hurt for real. Means all the defenses we built don't work anymore." Her father blinked again. She chose to believe it meant something. "I should go." She kissed his forehead. "The lawyers are waiting. Whatever I decide, I'll come tell you, even if you can't hear me. Even if you stopped being able to hear me months ago." She left before the tears could fall. Made it to the parking lot before her phone rang. Lucien. She almost didn't answer, but some traitorous part of her needed to hear his voice, needed confirmation that he was real, and not just a fever dream her desperate brain had conjured. "Where are you?" No greeting, just that question loaded with everything he wouldn't say. "Out. Walking. Thinking. The meeting's in an hour." "I know." Silence stretched between them, filled with all the words they'd been avoiding. "Evelyn..." He stopped. She heard him breathe, heard the control cracking. "You don't have to come if you've decided. If you want to end this. Celeste can handle the paperwork remotely. You never have to see me again." The offer should have felt like freedom. Instead, it felt like drowning. "Is that what you want?" "No." The word came out raw, honest. "But what I want stopped mattering the moment I put you in danger. The moment my crusade almost got your brother killed. The moment I..." Another pause. "The moment I realized I'd destroyed you to save myself." "You didn't destroy me." "Destroy..." "Didn't I?" "You were a physical therapist. You had a simple life. Now you're someone who's held a gun. Someone who's watched people die. Someone who's been used as bait by the FBI and threatened by pharmaceutical executives and turned into a weapon in wars you never signed up for. His voice dropped. You should hate me. I gave you every reason to. I should, she agreed. But I don't. The confession hung there, fragile and dangerous. Why not? Because you're not the man I thought you were. Not just cold calculation and ruthless business decisions. You're someone who spent 3 years building a case against Conrad Whitmore because you couldn't live with people dying for profit. You're someone who was ready to sacrifice your company to save my brother. You're someone who... Her voice broke. Who looked at me in that warehouse like losing me would be worse than dying. She heard him breathe, harsh, unsteady. I meant what I said, he told her. In the warehouse. I love you. I know I'm not supposed to. No, it violates every term of our contract. No, it makes me weak and vulnerable and everything my father taught me to avoid. But I love you, and I can't... He stopped, collected himself. I can't go back to pretending you're just an arrangement, a transaction, a contract with an expiration date. Evelyn closed her eyes, leaning against her car in a parking lot that smelled like exhaust and November decay, and felt the decision crystallize. Then don't. What? Don't pretend. Don't go back. Don't... She took a breath. Don't show up to that meeting. Don't let Celeste handle this like business. Meet me instead. Where? The place where this started, Cafe Margot, 2 o'clock, just you and me. No lawyers, no contracts, just us. For a long moment, he didn't respond. She wondered if she'd pushed too far, asked too much, expected something he couldn't give. Then, I'll be there. The line went dead. Evelyn drove through Boston with her heart hammering against her ribs, wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life or the first real decision she'd made in months. The cafe looked exactly the same, exposed brick, Edison bulbs, the kind of studied casualness that came with money. But everything else had changed. She arrived at 1:55. Lucien was already there, sitting in the same corner booth where he'd first outlined the arrangement that had destroyed and rebuilt them both. He looked different somehow, less polished, more human. His suit jacket was off, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened like he'd stopped caring about the armor of perfection. She slid into the booth across from him. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. I canceled the meeting, he said finally. Told Celeste we'd handle it ourselves. What did she say? That I was making a mistake. That emotion has no place in legal dissolution. That I should let professionals handle it. A ghost of a smile. I told her she was fired. Evelyn's eyes went wide. You fired your lawyer? I fired my lawyer, my board of directors, most of my executive team. He leaned back. Turns out when you stop caring about building empires, a lot of the empire becomes unnecessary. Lucien, I resigned as CEO, officially, 3 days ago. Martha and the board accepted. They're installing someone younger, more stable, less likely to start wars with pharmaceutical companies. He said it without bitterness, just fact. I kept my shares, my seat on the board, but the day-to-day running of Vale Industries, someone else's problem now. She couldn't process it. Why? Because I spent 15 years building something I thought mattered, destroying competitors, accumulating wealth and power, and all the things my father said would make me untouchable. His jaw clenched. Then I met you, and in 6 weeks you made me realize I'd built a monument to nothing, that I was untouchable because I'd made myself untouchable, that I'd confused isolation with strength. So what now? Now I figure out who I am when I'm not being Lucien Vale, CEO, when I'm just, he gestured vaguely, just some guy who's terrified and broken and trying to be better. Evelyn felt something crack open in her chest. All the walls she'd built, all the defenses that had kept her safe, crumbling under the weight of his honesty. I brought the contract. She pulled the document from her bag, 47 pages of clauses that had once defined their entire relationship. The original, the one we signed at the courthouse. He looked at it like it might bite him. And? She tore it in half, then in half again, and again, until 47 pages became confetti scattered across the table between them, destroyed beyond recovery. No more contracts, she said. No more arrangements. No more pretending this is anything but what it is. Which is? Terrifying. Messy. Complicated. She reached across the table, took his hand. Real. His fingers closed around hers like a lifeline. What do you want, Evelyn? Forget the money. Forget the arrangement. What do you actually want? The question she'd been avoiding for weeks. The one that mattered more than all the others combined. I want mornings where we drink coffee together instead of in separate rooms. I want to know what makes you laugh instead of just what makes you calculate. I want to fight with you about normal things like whose turn it is to do dishes instead of whether we should risk our lives exposing corporate criminals. She squeezed his hand. I want to try being married for real, not a performance, not a transaction, just two broken people figuring it out together. I don't know how to do that. Neither do I. I'll probably fuck it up. Definitely, and I'll probably make it worse. She smiled. But maybe that's the point. Maybe real relationships are supposed to be messy. Maybe love isn't about perfect contracts and ironclad terms. Maybe it's just showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Lucien looked at her with eyes that had finally stopped hiding. I'm not good at this, at being vulnerable, at admitting I need someone. My father spent my entire childhood teaching me that needing people was weakness. Your father was wrong. Was he? Because needing you almost got you killed, almost got Jace killed, almost destroyed everything. But it didn't. We survived. Together. She leaned forward. And maybe that's what love is. Not some grand romantic gesture, not perfect safety, just choosing to show up for each other even when the world's on fire. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then something in his expression cracked, and what bled through looked like hope. Okay. Okay? Okay, let's try. Real marriage. Real relationship. Real everything. His voice dropped. But Evelyn, if I hurt you, if I fall back into old patterns and start treating you like a business decision instead of a person, you have to promise you'll leave. Promise you won't stay out of obligation or guilt or some misguided attempt to fix me. I promise. If you promise the same. If I become someone you can't stand, someone who makes you miserable, you tell me, you don't suffer in silence because you think you owe me something. Deal. They shook on it, formal, ridiculous, completely sincere. Then Lucien pulled her across the booth and kissed her, not desperate like the warehouse, not performative like the galas, just honest and real and tasting like coffee and relief. When they broke apart, Evelyn was smiling. So what happens now? Now we figure it out, one day at a time, starting with, he checked his watch, starting with me taking you somewhere. Where? You'll see. They left the cafe hand in hand, feeling strangely like teenagers on a first date instead of a married couple rebuilding from ruins. Lucien drove them out of the city, into suburbs that gave way to rural Massachusetts, into November landscape that had started preparing for winter. He pulled up to a house. Not a mansion, not a penthouse. Just a house. 2 stories, weathered blue paint, big windows overlooking forest that stretched for miles. A porch swing moved in November wind. Smoke curled from the chimney. What is this? Evelyn asked. Mine. Well, ours if you want it. He killed the engine. I bought it 2 weeks ago. Been renovating it. Thought maybe we needed somewhere that wasn't the penthouse. Somewhere that didn't have memories of contracts and performances and all the things we're trying to move past. She stared at the house, at the porch swing, at the smoke that suggested someone had lit a fire inside. You bought us a house. I bought us an option, a possibility. He looked at her. If you hate it, we sell it. If you love it, we make it home. If you're somewhere in between, we figure it out together. Evelyn got out of the car, walked to the porch, pushed open the door. The interior smelled like fresh paint and wood smoke and possibility. Furniture that looked comfortable instead of expensive. A kitchen with a table built for actual eating, not just display. Windows everywhere letting in November light. Upstairs, she found bedrooms. One clearly designated as his, minimal, clean, the space of someone learning to relax. Another set up as hers, desk by the window, bookshelves already installed, the kind of room that said, this is yours and yours alone. And a third room, empty except for a bed. Not separate bedrooms with careful distance, just a bedroom, together. She turned to find Lucien standing in the doorway, watching her with an expression that held everything he was too afraid to say out loud. 3 rooms, she said. His, hers, and ours. Seemed like the right metaphor. We can be together, or separate, or both, depending on what we need. He stepped inside. No rules except the ones we make. No contracts except showing up and trying. And if it doesn't work, then we tried. And that's more than most people can say. Evelyn walked to the window overlooking forest that stretched toward a horizon she couldn't see. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 weeks ago, desperate, exhausted, trapped by circumstances she couldn't control. That woman would have laughed at the idea of choosing uncertainty over security, would have taken the $5 million and run. But she wasn't that woman anymore. She'd become someone who'd pointed guns and made impossible choices and learned that love wasn't a liability. It was the only thing that made the impossible choices bearable. "Show me the rest," she said. They spent the afternoon exploring their maybe future home. Lucien showed her the office he'd set up, smaller than his penthouse study, human-scaled, designed for work that mattered instead of empire building. The foundation he was starting, healthcare access, medication affordability, all the things Conrad had destroyed turned into something constructive. "I can't bring back the people who died," he said, standing in the office, surrounded by plans and proposals. "But I can make sure fewer people die going forward. It's not atonement. It's not enough. It's just something." "It's more than nothing," Evelyn said. "And sometimes more than nothing is all we can do." Evening came early in November. They lit a fire, ordered pizza because neither felt like cooking, sat on the floor eating from the box like college kids instead of adults playing at marriage. Lucien told her about his mother, the whole story this time, not just the tragedy. About a woman who'd loved literature and terrible jokes and gardening, who'd tried to teach him that emotions weren't weaknesses, but his father had been louder, more persistent, more successful at drowning out her voice. "She left me a letter," he said, staring into the fire. "Found it after she died. She said loving my father was like loving a statue, that she'd spent 20 years trying to crack his exterior and find the human underneath, that she'd failed and it had broken her." His voice went rough. "She told me not to be like him, to let myself feel things, to be messy and human and alive." "Did you?" "Not until you." He looked at her. "Not until someone refused to be intimidated by the statue and kept pushing until something cracked." Evelyn leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the fire's warmth and the weight of everything they'd survived to reach this moment. "Your mother would be proud." "You think?" "I know, because you're doing what she couldn't. You're choosing differently, choosing messy and human and alive, even though it's terrifying." They sat in silence, punctuated by fire crackle and November wind against windows. After a while, Lucien spoke again. "Move in with me, here. Not as a contract wife or an arrangement or anything, but Evelyn who drives me crazy and makes me feel human and keeps tearing up contracts I thought were ironclad." "What about the penthouse?" "Keep it, sell it, burn it down for the insurance money. I don't care, I just—" He turned to face her fully. "I just want to try building something real. With you. No escape clauses, no expiration dates, just us figuring it out together until we're too old to remember why we were ever apart." Evelyn looked at him. This man who'd started as a transaction and become something she couldn't live without. This man who'd been willing to sacrifice everything to keep her safe. This man who was offering her something infinitely more valuable than money. A choice. Not obligation, not desperation. Just pure, terrifying choice. "Okay," she said. Okay. Let's do this. Real marriage, real life, real everything." She kissed him. "But Lucien, if you ever buy me jewelry without asking first, I'm throwing it in the ocean." He laughed, real, unguarded sound that transformed his face into something almost boyish. "Noted. No surprise jewelry. And we split the housework 50-50. Obviously. And you have to actually talk to me when something's wrong instead of going silent and brooding like a Gothic novel protagonist." "That one might take practice." "Then we practice." She settled against him, feeling his arms come around her solid and real. "We practice, and we fuck up, and we try again. That's the deal." "Best deal I've ever made," he murmured into her hair. They stayed there as the fire burned low and night pressed against the windows. Two people who'd married as strangers and somehow found their way to something real. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was theirs. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. 6 months later, Evelyn stood in the kitchen of their house watching spring fight its way through the last remnants of winter. The foundation had launched officially, Val Mercer Healthcare Initiative, named for both of them because Lucien insisted she'd earned it. They'd opened 3 clinics in underserved neighborhoods, subsidized medication costs for over 2,000 patients, hired an army of doctors and nurses who believed medicine was a right, not a privilege. Conrad Whitmore was serving 23 years in federal prison. His company had dissolved, assets liquidated, remaining funds distributed to families who'd suffered from their pricing schemes. It wasn't justice, but it was something. Jace was 18 months sober and living in a halfway house, working as a peer counselor for other addicts trying to claw their way back from the edge. He called every Sunday. The conversations were awkward and real and slowly rebuilding what addiction had destroyed. Her father had died in February. Peacefully, in the expensive facility Lucien had paid for, surrounded by nurses who'd loved him and photos of the children he'd raised and could no longer recognize. Evelyn had held his hand and told him it was okay to let go, that she and Jace would be fine, that he'd done enough. The grief had been complicated, mourning not just the father she'd lost, but the one she'd never really had. The one the stroke had taken before she'd had a chance to know him as an adult. But Lucien had sat with her through the crying and the rage and the weird, guilty relief. Had learned that sometimes being there was enough, that love didn't require solutions, just presence. Now watching April rain wash winter away, Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not perfect, not without scars, but real and earned, and hers. The front door opened. Lucien entered carrying groceries and looking nothing like the corporate predator who'd offered her a contract in a cafe a lifetime ago. He'd let his hair grow slightly longer, wore jeans instead of suits most days, smiled more, laughed easier, became someone who looked comfortable in his own skin. "I got that bread you like," he said, unpacking bags. "The one from the farmer's market. And those tomatoes that cost more than reasonable, but you said were worth it. They are worth it. Everything's worth it according to you. Because I have excellent taste." He snorted, crossed the kitchen, kissed her forehead. "How was the clinic?" "Exhausting." "Good. We had 63 patients today. Mrs. Rodriguez finally got her diabetes under control. The Thompson kids' asthma is responding to the new medication, and we signed up 15 new families for the sliding scale program." She leaned into him. "How was your meeting with the congressional committee?" "Brutal. They're pushing back on the pharmaceutical reform bill. Lots of industry pressure, lots of money changing hands to kill it," he sighed. "But we're not giving up. Martha's coordinating with 3 other senators. We've got public opinion on our side after the Whitmore trial. It's going to be a fight, but you're good at fighting." "We're good at fighting," he corrected, emphasizing the plural. "This isn't my crusade anymore. It's ours." She smiled, kissed him properly this time. Felt the familiar spark that hadn't dimmed, just transformed from desperate to deep. They made dinner together. Nothing fancy, just pasta and that overpriced bread and wine from a bottle that didn't cost more than her car. Ate at the table they'd picked out together from a store that sold furniture for actual humans instead of showrooms. Talked about normal things, foundation business, Jace's latest milestone, whether they should repaint the porch this summer or wait another year. Normal. Boring. Perfect. After dinner, Evelyn found the torn pieces of their original contract in a box in her desk. She'd kept them, couldn't say why exactly. Maybe as a reminder of who they'd been. Maybe as proof that some agreements were meant to be destroyed. "What are you doing?" Lucien appeared in the doorway. She held up the fragments. "Thinking we should burn these, officially, make room for what we became. Or..." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small box. Not jewelry. Something else. She opened it to find 2 platinum rings. Simple, unadorned, the kind of bands that looked like they'd been worn for decades instead of just purchased. "I had them made from the melted down pieces of the destroyed contract," he said quietly. "Figured if we're doing this for real, we should market somehow. Not a business arrangement, not a transaction, just a choice we keep making." Evelyn looked at the rings, felt tears prick her eyes. "You melted down our fake marriage contract to make real wedding rings? Too much?" "It's perfect." She took one ring, slipped it on his finger. It fit like it belonged there. Completely insane, but perfect. He put the other ring on her hand, kissed her knuckles. Marry me. For real this time. Not in a courthouse with a judge who doesn't care. Somewhere that matters. With people who love us. With vows we write ourselves and mean every word of. We're already married. Legally, but not, he gestured, struggling for words. Not in the way that counts. Not in the way that says we chose this knowing exactly what we were choosing. She looked at the ring on her finger, forged from the ashes of their arrangement. Looked at the man who'd started as a stranger and become her home. Looked at the life they'd built from desperation and debt and impossible choices that had somehow led them here. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Real wedding, real vows, real everything. When? Summer. Outside. Somewhere with trees and terrible catering and Jace walking me down the aisle because he deserves to see that I'm okay, that we're okay. Lucian pulled her close, held her like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. I love you. I know. I'm going to keep saying it until it stops feeling terrifying. Good. Because I'm going to keep saying it back until you believe you deserve to hear it. They stood there in her office, surrounded by foundation paperwork and plans for tomorrow, and the quiet certainty that they'd fought their way to something worth keeping. It wasn't the fairy tale she'd never believed in. It was better. It was real. Messy and complicated and built on ruins. But real. And that was everything. 3 years later, Evelyn sat on the porch swing watching their daughter, Ivy, 18 months old, dark hair and gray eyes, and her father's serious expression. Chase butterflies through spring grass. Lucien sat beside her, one hand on her knee, the other holding a letter from the Congressional Committee confirming passage of the pharmaceutical reform bill they'd spent years fighting for. We won, he said, still sounding surprised. We won, she agreed. It had taken 3 years of testimony, lobbying, public pressure, and media campaigns. 3 years of fighting the same industry that had nearly destroyed them. But the bill had passed. Comprehensive reforms that would cap drug prices, increase access to generic medications, and hold pharmaceutical companies accountable for pricing schemes that killed people for profit. It wouldn't bring back Marcus Chen or the hundreds of others, but it would save thousands going forward, and that had to be enough. Jace visited that evening, 4 years sober and working as a full-time counselor now. He'd finished his degree, found an apartment, built a life that looked nothing like the one that had almost killed him. He held Ivy and made faces that sent her into shrieking giggles, looking more like the brother Evelyn remembered from before addiction had stolen him. You're good at that, she said, watching him bounce her daughter. Practice. I've got 3 kids in my caseload. Families destroyed by the same shit that destroyed us. He looked at Ivy. Want to make sure the next generation doesn't have to learn the hard way. They ate dinner on the porch as evening painted the sky purple and gold. Told stories, shared victories, spoke honestly about the scars they still carried and probably always would, but scars were just proof you'd survived. Evidence that you'd fought battles and lived to tell about it. After Jace left, after Ivy was asleep in her crib, Evelyn and Lucian sat on their bed, the one they'd chosen together, the one that existed in a room without divisions or separate spaces, just theirs. Do you ever regret it? She asked. The contract, the arrangement, everything that led us here? He considered it seriously. I regret the danger, the fear, almost losing you and Jace, Conrad in the warehouse, and all the ways I put you at risk. He pulled her against him. But regret meeting you. Regret what we became? Never. Not for a second. Good answer. It's the truth. She kissed him, tasting wine and honesty and the comfortable intimacy of people who'd seen each other at their worst and chosen to stay anyway. I love you, she said. I love you too. He said it easier now, like the words had stopped being dangerous and become simple fact. Even though you're terrible at loading the dishwasher, even though you're neurotic about alphabetizing the spices, even though you steal all the blankets, even though you set alarms for ungodly hours. They traded imperfections like vows, cataloging all the ways they drove each other crazy and chose each other anyway. Because that was love, not the fairy tale version that came easy and perfect, but the messy, complicated, hard-won version that required showing up every day and choosing to try. Later, Lying in darkness with Lucian's breathing steady beside her, Evelyn thought about the envelope that had arrived at her apartment a lifetime ago. The photograph of Jace. The impossible offer from a stranger who'd offered to make her problems disappear. If she could go back, knowing everything that would follow, the danger, the fear, the nights she'd thought she wouldn't survive, would she sign that contract again? Yes. 1,000 times yes. Because that contract, destroyed and forged into rings, had led her here. To a man who'd learned to be human. To a brother who'd found his way back from the edge. To a daughter who'd never know what desperation tasted like. To a life built not on money or obligation, but on choice. The kind of choice that remade you. The kind that destroyed who you were and rebuilt you into something stronger. She'd signed away 2 years of her life to save her family. Instead, she'd found a family worth saving her for. And in the end, that made all the difference. The broken contracts, the impossible choices, the warehouse where they'd almost died, all of it had been worth it, every second. Because some debts couldn't be measured in money, some marriages couldn't be defined by contracts, and some loves were worth fighting for precisely because they started as lies. Especially then. Evelyn closed her eyes, felt Lucian's arm tighten around her in sleep, and let herself finally believe what she'd been too afraid to accept for so long. They'd made it. Against every odd, through every disaster, past every moment that should have destroyed them. They'd made it, and tomorrow they'd wake up and choose each other again, and the day after that, and the day after that, until choosing became as natural as breathing. Until the contract became irrelevant because the commitment was real. Until the arrangement transformed into a love story that proved fairy tales could be built from ashes. Not perfect, not easy, but theirs. And that was everything. That was enough. That was home.